ويستعجلونك بالسيئة قبل الحسنة وقد خلت من قبلهم المثلات وإن ربك لذو مغفرة للناس على ظلمهم وإن ربك لشديد العقاب ويقول الذين كفروا لولا أنزل عليه آية من ربه إنما أنت منذر ولكل قوم هاد الله يعلم ما تحمل كل أنثى وما تغيض الأرحام وما تزداد وكل شيء عنده بمقدار عالم الغيب والشهادة الكبير
بارك الله فيك. We have the citation from the Holy Quran from one of our students. بارك الله فيك. Our next point in the agenda is poem by Dr. Mariam Liman, the Assistant Director for Gender Studies. Over to you.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على النبي الكريم. Before we start the poem, we'd like to welcome our special guest, our father, our mentor, Dr. Usman Bugaji, who came specifically from Kaduna amongst his other journeys to be with us to tell us about the Sokoto Caliphate and to in fact set the stage for us. We would also like to welcome our sister. In fact, Professor Asma'u, also again she also shares the same name, Professor Asma'u Garba Said. And the same lineage. Alhamdulillah. We welcome and we also appreciate the presence of our brothers, Professor Yusuf Adamu and Professor Rabi Saad, as well as our brother, my engineer Bashir Adamu Ali. This is not an opening remark, but we need to appreciate them and appreciate each and every one of you that is here for this program. I will now, thank you very much. I will now give Dr. Mariam to start with the poem written by somebody that is so passionate about Nana Asma'u, and she called her the Taurariya.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tauraruwa Nana Asma'u daga gidan Shehu Mujaddadi, maza masu faɗa aji, masu faɗin gaskiya babu khaufi. Kika bullo kika zan abin mamaki. Nana Asma'u bi Fodio, haskenki ya haska duniya. Tauraruwar Jim Boyd da ni Asma'u bi Liman. Uwar 'yan taro da duk ahalin gidan Shehu, inna wuro waziri gida da ɗan laima. mace mai ilimi da kamala, ga tausayi ga karama. Ta koyar da ilimi babu ƙyashi a gare ta. A yi karatu, Nana ta yi bayani. Karatunki ribarki gobe ƙiyama. Duk a waƙe an ka tsatsara, tsarki, wanka, alwallaki, har sallarki ki gyara. Karatunki, waƙenki, kun ji dai hikimar cikin kamala. Kina tuwanki, kina wankinki, wagga basira in kin gane. A hankali har yaranki su dace, su ma ɗai-ɗai su kawo hadda. Da haka ilimi ya watsu har mu sami ci gaba a society. Can a Zazzau, Amina ta yi ta yaƙi, birni da ƙauye duk sun zama nata. Ita kuma nata jihadi, takobinta ayar Allah. Tun kan a haifo kalmar feminism, Nana ke koyar da mata don su sami sauyi. Tana wa'azi tana rera salati don mata su san sun dace. Can gobe ƙiyama inda sai abin da ka shuka. Mace mai ilimi da jarunta, uwar daja ta tura jaji da malafarsu ƙasa-ƙasa har ƙasar Daura, don mata su gane mahaliccinsu Allah guda ɗaya ne. Jiki duk ilimi da kamala, Nana ƙasidunki duk sun nuna tsarin basira da karama da Allahu Jalla ya yi miki. Muna godiya a gare ki, Nana Fara'ar Shehu. Ƙoƙarinki mu ma mun shaida, ladarki Ubangiji ya biya ki can a ƙiyama in duk an tashi. This is written by you know I can be very emotional. This is written by Hajiye Asma'u. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We listened the poem from the Deputy Director, Center for Gender Studies, Dr. Mariam. What we have here in the agenda is opening remark by Sister Directorate, Professor Aisha Abdul Ismail. Over to you, ma'am.
I'm back once again, and I start again by welcoming our special guests, our chairperson, our elders, and the participants. You are all very much welcome to this program, and the program is on the life and works of Nana Asma'u Bint Fodio. This is not the first program that we have had. In 2024, we also conducted a symposium on Nana Asma'u, nurturing her legacy and empowering generations, looking at the intellectual and social impact of her works. And our chairperson then was one of our presenters. We also invited Professor Sadia Umar, also one of the experts on Nana Asma'u, to make a presentation. So last year, for exigencies, we were not able to hold the symposium, which is supposed to be an annual event. Alhamdulillah, this year we are holding it, and we are here, and our theme this year is the private sphere as foundation, looking at Nana Asma'u as a daughter, as a wife, and as a mother, and the realities of polygyny. And here we seek to show that whatever one becomes, the private sphere is the foundation, the family, the home is the foundation. Alhamdulillah, the Sisters Directorate of the Triple IT is a directorate that is concerned with aspects that affect the family. The Muslim female academic, the Muslim female professional, the family, which involves all members, the children, the husband, the wife, and so on. And all our activities at the Sisters Directorate have been focused on that. Just last week, we conducted a program for secondary school girls on awareness creation, trying to show them who they are, why they were created, and then looking at some current issues that affect them and guiding them, issues like issues of social media, financial literacy, substance abuse, and the rest. And then again also we conducted a program, Navigating Parenting in the 21st Century, interacting with parents, especially looking at the values and the issues. Issues of mental health are also issues that the Sisters Directorate conduct, and we also do yearly programs. This year we took stress and anxiety among Muslim women professionals. So Alhamdulillah, the Sisters Directorate is on its feet, trying to look at all dimensions that affect Muslim professionals, that affect the Muslim family. The International Institute of Islamic Thought, as we all know, many of us, this is not the first program, is an institute that originated with the works of some students that went to the United States for their postgraduate studies. And when they went there, they are Muslim students, they saw Islam in action, even though without the Shahada. And because of that, they reflected, they examined their situation, and they came up with talks and ideas on how to Islamize knowledge and how to later on integrate knowledge on all aspects, all disciplines, because knowledge is universal and was already integrated, but the integration, the Islamic aspect was removed as a result of secularism. So they wanted to bring back the Islamic aspect of knowledge. So that is the work of Triple IT from different dimensions. Unfortunately, our national coordinator is engaged, even though his mind is here. And incidentally, he is engaged on the same topic, on the Sokoto Caliphate. So he has given me the role to indicate his apology, and also the fact that he is not here with us, but his heart and mind are here with us. And he gave special greetings to Malam, that he wanted to have been here, but unfortunately he couldn't. So we welcome each and every one of us, and like I mentioned earlier, today we want to look at the home. We want to show that it is the home that is the basis and the foundation of whatever one's become. And we are taking that with Nana Asma'u. I hope we will take with us lessons on the lives of Nana Asma'u and implement it in whatever we do. Always, whenever I read the works of Nana Asma'u or the works of the Sokoto Caliphate, I see so much similarities, and I see so much that can be learned. Always there is something new. So that is why the Triple IT decided to take the Sokoto Caliphate as a project, and the Sisters Directorate is taking the life and works of Nana Asma'u as its own special project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for listening the opening remarks from the Professor Aisha Abdul Ismail. Our next item in the agenda is objective of the workshop and expectation from the Director, Center for Gender Studies, Ambassador Dr. Safia Ahabanu. Over to you.
So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Alhamdulillah, I'll say, before I say anything, I'll say that this space is full of my role models. And I'm starting with that deliberately because this thing is about learning from others, from lives that have been lived over a century ago, and we're learning. Still, we're talking about someone that has been outstanding and exceptional. Baba, thank you very much. We fondly call him Baba because we can't just call him with a formal title. If you know Professor Usman Bugaje, you will know that he is just someone that assumes the role of a father to the community, and is someone that is so passionate about building an excellent ummah. Thank you very much for joining us. We also have Professor Yusuf, Professor Emma Saad, our mother, Professor Asma'u, and our elder brother and father, Engineer Bashir, and everyone here. Welcome. We're happy to have you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So in 2024, the Sisters Directorate of the Triple IT, our mother, Professor Aisha Ismail, called me and said, we want to have a collaboration with the Center for Gender Studies in hosting a program on Nana Asma'u, Bint Fodio. Honestly, I know the name. I know about Usman Fodio's daughter, Nana Asma'u, but I did not know anything about her. That became an eye-opener for me. And that is how we passionately began to look at how we can have these excellent individuals as role models. We don't have to be talking about Catherine McKinnon as a role model for our young girls. We can simply pick those that we can actually relate with, those that have done tremendously in the society, and first document them. You know, the histories, alhamdulillah, have somewhat been documented, but amazingly it was even documented by others, not as much from those in Nigeria or northern Nigeria. So as part of what we decided after the first program, we discussed with the Triple IT that we will hold annual programs on Nana Asma'u, inshallah. We couldn't hold it in 2025, but now we're restarting it, and we're hoping that we will make it an annual activity, but then not only with symposium, but other numerous activities. So Northern Nigeria has produced numerous exceptional women whose contributions to education governance, diplomacy, scholarship, and public service and community development have significantly shaped society. Despite these remarkable accomplishments, many of their stories remain underdocumented, insufficiently celebrated, and largely inaccessible to the younger generation. At a time when societies are confronted with increasing social challenges, we need to talk about our own role models. And a role model such as Nana Asma'u Bint Fodio stand out as a model not only for the Muslim female, but also for society in general. She is indeed celebrated as an international role model. So we're happy to host today's program, and we look forward to active engagement from all participants. And we also hope that the outcome of this will inspire many more programs and activities, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Director. The next thing is about the three-food ITM, which is supposed to be. Okay. Yes. Okay. Now let's go to the remarks by the chairperson, Professor Asma'u Said.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like, on behalf of Triple IT, International Institute of Islamic Thought, Kano, and Center for Gender Studies, Bayero University, Kano, to welcome everybody who is here to this one-day symposium. This is the second time they are organizing it. I think the first time was on Tuesday, 19th November 2024, and I was one of those who was invited. At that time, my thought was, what will somebody say about Nana Asma'u that has not been said? She died over 150 years ago, but her memory are still fresh. And at that time, I remember I gave around 4 subsections that we will learn a number of things from her. I hope today, from the 3 presenters who will look at her as a daughter, a wife, and a mother, we learn more. And I hope maybe at the end of this, maybe a book or a pamphlet or something will come out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. The next thing is setting the stage by the special guest, Professor Osman Bogai.
Going to fix it.
Bye.
I prefer as a teacher. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. I was looking at the time allocated and I was scribbling a few things so that I don't stray very far away from the time, because there's a lot to talk and it's a very interesting topic. The first thing I would like to say that I'm delighted to be able to come over despite a very crowded schedule. And I think no sacrifice is big enough when it comes to the issue of Asma'u. Asma'u has solved a lot of problems for us. But because we have not studied her, we have not read her works, we are tumbling and fumbling and making so many other mistakes. Even the scholars who speak a lot about Asma'u, I discovered they have not actually read the content of her work. Because if you do, a number of problems that we are facing today, honestly, would have been solved. I hope I will point to just one incident or one particular aspect. But let me first say that I should set the stage by giving you the context within which Asma'u was born and the context in which she grew up and the role she played and the activities she generated and the inspiration she continues to. Maybe the first thing is to assume we have all heard about the Sokoto Caliphate or the Sokoto Jihad. Unfortunately, a lot of what we read are from the Europeans. And you see, because the European imperialists wanted to justify their imperialism, they created this notion of a Fulani jihad. And if you read the speech of Lord Lugard when he took over the Sokoto Caliphate, he said, we are taking over by conquest, just as the Fulanis took over from the houses by conquest. Now, this is the problem. Now, this is absolutely wrong. It's not true. It is construed to create an alibi for European imperialism. Because the movement that created the Sokoto Caliphate was not a Fulani movement. It was not a Fulani jihad. It is a scholarly, if you like, intellectual movement of scholars. And it's if you read human history, every time you find changes in society, changes are always made when scholars decide to be the conscience of their society. Today, both the Islamic scholarship and the Western scholarship that we see in the university does not speak to society. Universities are ivory towers locked in for people to study and get certificates so they can come out and work and live, so to speak, a good life in the typical Western understanding of life. And this is a major problem. But when scholars decide to become conscious of their society, they make the knowledge they generate to speak to the problems of society. Today, what we study, the research we do, the policies we propose within our universities does not speak to the problems of our own country. In other words, political leaders proceed to do what they do without any reference to the knowledge that our university generates. In other words, there is a disconnect between knowledge that is being generated in the universities and governance that is run by. And anytime you have that disconnect, societies do not develop. So change comes only when scholars, learned people become the conscience of their society. And development takes place when there is a nexus between knowledge and governance. And if you study the transformation of China in the last 30 years or so, China has made this astonishing progress because they decided to link their universities directly with the industries, with governance. So governance is informed by knowledge and research. And it is the knowledge that the universities produce, the research that is done in the universities and polytechnics that drives governance and drives the industry. Today in Nigeria, as many of you would know, the people who govern us have no business with what is happening in the university. They don't even understand what goes on in the university. Many of them cannot read the research that is done in the university. Many of them do not have any connection of any kind in the policies that they develop or they run the country with research and knowledge in the university. And that is a tragedy. And that is why our society is not making any progress. Let me quickly come back to the Sokoto Caliphate. So Sokoto Caliphate was created by a movement of scholars started by Sheikh Usman and Fodio. So when Sheikh Usman and Fodio, who was born in 1754, like some of you would have read, which is like a few years, 20 or so years from the declaration of the American independence of 1776, he went to school like every child, especially from a family of learned people. And after finishing the basic studies and was ready to become a teacher or to start a trade at the age of 20, that is in 1774, he took a very important decision that made the difference. And what was that decision? That decision was that he changed the role of a scholar. When he was growing up and when he was learning, scholarship, Islamic scholarship at that time was defined by the fact that the learned stay in their houses, in their zawri, and those who want knowledge will go to them and they will learn. And that was how scholarship was for nearly 200 years or more. Shaykh Usman was not learned in his society at that time when he started this. No, he simply decided to change the role of a scholar. Instead of staying in his zawri for people to come and learn, he went out to deliver that knowledge. And that was what made the difference. But he also did something which made the difference. He made the knowledge that he generated to speak to the problems of society. If you like, he now mobilized knowledge to the service of the community. So that knowledge now speaks to society. Knowledge now solves the problems of society. And again, he did something that was also consequential. And that is making knowledge to create the consciousness for justice. So when you learn that you cannot ignore injustice. One basic hadith that keeps ringing everywhere is مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِيَدِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ فَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. Any one of you, the Prophet ﷺ said, has a responsibility. Whenever you see anything wrong, you must stop it. If you can't, because you're limited, then you have to speak out so that those who should would now go and stop that wrong thing. If even that becomes difficult, then you should avoid it yourself and develop a position where you and whoever you can influence must never be part of that wrong thing. And that is the lowest level of Iman. Now, that kind of consciousness is what actually created that dynamics where he and those he was able to mobilize, a few of them, and they continue to grow, said to themselves that we cannot live our society in this level, or at this level of ignorance and level of political tyranny. The political tyranny is symbolized by a popular saying, some of you may have captured it. The most powerful state in the 18th century, that's the 1770s, was that of Bawa Jangwarzo, the king of Gobir. And he was described as someone who, because of his tyranny, even the cock dares not make any noise because of that tyranny. That was how tyrannical the house rulers were. And they were oppressive. And the situation in the Hausa state was worse than what we are going through today. So when people say, oh, the country is so bad, or we can't do anything, the situation, no. In fact, we are far better. If Shehu at that stage can transform his society within barely 30 years, then it should be possible for us to do so. So, coming back to the point, it was a scholarly movement that raised the consciousness of society, gave knowledge. One of the game changers that Shehu did was a decision to educate the women. Because at that time, the women were really relegated to the background. They were like chattels. Nobody cared about them. Nobody cared about their rights. And he made a special arrangement to make sure that women were educated. And his brother who followed after him, Sheikh Abdullahi bin Fodio, and later his son Muhammad Bello, and a number of scholars around them, like Abdul Qadir bin Mustafa, like Muhammad Sambu, like Muhammad Ashafa, and a lot of them were all making sure that women are educated. And I remember Abdullah Fodio, in fact, made the point that it is the right of a Muslim woman to be educated. If her husband does not want her to go out to be educated, then he has to take responsibility for her education. Meaning he has to be learned enough to teach her. And that if for any reason he is not educated, he cannot teach her, and he does not allow her to, he said she does not need the permission of her husband because God has given her permission to go out and search knowledge. This kind of revolutionary stance was what transformed the Hausa land. And that was what gave Asma'u that atmosphere of total encouragement and inspiration to study and to read. So women were motivated, were liberated, if you like. He had attacks from scholars. Why are you mixing men and women in one place? And of course he argued. He replied them. Sometimes when he thinks the argument is so trivial, he would ask Sheikh Abdullah to write to that scholar who has attacked him for this. But he remained consistent. He remained on the line. And he developed the women to the highest level of scholarship. And Asma'u is one example. All his wives were learned and they were teachers. And all the wives of his brothers and disciples and every woman within the circle of the Jama'ah of Shehu was automatically educated. She had to be, because these were the basic standards that they set for that society. And they became as learned as their male counterpart. Asma'u, as you would hear, wrote at least 86 different works. Some were poems, some were commentaries, some were translations, some were original work of her own. And it is in this kind of atmosphere that Asma'u grew. And as you may have, she was born in 1793. And this was 19 years after Shehu had graduated and started his rounds of teachings and studies. So she was perhaps the first of his children that was born in Eger. Well, that was the year he settled down in Eger. Eger is a town. All these 19 years, he never stayed in one place. He would move to Zamfara, he would go to Kebbi, he would go to Agadez to study with Jibril bin Omar, come back, go to a different part of Hausa land. So he was moving with his family for 20 years, if you like. And when he thought he had generated sufficient awareness and he had built scholars, everywhere he went, in Zamfara, for example, he spent 5 years. What does he do? He brings scholars, he teaches them, and he was writing at the same time. He was writing books. Because by 1793, he had written Ihya Sunnah wa Ikhmad al-Bid'ah, which is a large volume of work that covers the fiqh of ibadah, the fiqh of muamala. It's a compendium which is basically sufficient to run your lives. In fact, as you know, he inspired scholars beyond Hausa land, like Ahmad Labo of Masina. Masina is in Mali. He was his student. He also rose, mobilized the society, and created an Islamic polity. And when he created that Islamic polity, he was running that polity with Ihya Usna wa Ikmad al-Bid'ah, just to show how complete that book is as a way of life and even for government. So, having settled in Egel, he started like a university town, like a postgraduate school. So scholars from Borno, from Masina, from Sebu in Mali, from Guinea, from so many other places were coming to stay, some of them weeks, some of them months, some of them years, to study the different types of books. And scholars around him started to specialize, some on hadith, some on Quran, some on fiqh, some on tasawwuf, some on the different sciences available. And like some of you would know, the scholars around him were also writing. He himself, Shehu, wrote not less than 114 different works. Abdullahi wrote about 96. Bello wrote about, Abdullahi, by the way, did 2 tafsirs. I mean, he did 2 tafsirs, I mean, which is an amazing amount of work. Just to do one takes you a lifetime. He did one which is like a summary, and then he did one that was expanded. So it's not like, you know, and all of them, especially the 3 of them, wrote on medicine. Some of you might not know, but it's important to say so. And it's part of the problem that we have in our curriculum. In the, I think, 90s, early 90s, I was asked to give a talk to the Islamic Medical Week at Fodio University. So I asked them, what topic do you want me to speak? They suggested a number of topics. I said, okay, wait a minute. You are studying medicine. In your curriculum, has anybody taught you the books on medicine written by Sokoto scholars? They said, no, they've never even heard about it. I said, okay, I'm going to give you that lecture on that. And just picking here and there, I collected about 12 different manuscripts. Shehu wrote on a number of things, anthelmintics, ophthalmology. Bello wrote on a number of areas also, including hemorrhoids. Abdullahi wrote more on preventive medicine. So the idea of preventive medicine is not a creation of the Europeans, right? Those of you who might be doctors here and who might be specializing in preventive medicine, you know, epidemiology is part of that kind of science, dealing with the spread of diseases and how to prevent them, and creating a clean environment, clean water, exercises. Abdullahi particularly was concerned about having exercises as part of preventive medicine. So these people were all around. They wrote on fiqh, they wrote on tafsir, they wrote on hadith, they wrote on governance, they wrote on corruption, they wrote on economy, they wrote on every conceivable aspect of human endeavor. There was nothing that they left behind. So it was a comprehensive education. Eventually, I just want to make this very important point. Asma'u was 11 when the hijrah took place. She memorized the Quran at the age of 10. So she was already at that level. So you can see, because she came from that environment, that house where knowledge was given the highest premium. Today, I think the highest premium for girls is marriage, right? Now we have to change that. Knowledge should be given the highest premium. I mean, today we are obsessed with marriages and ceremonies, and come and see how much money. Sorry, that sugar is too much. I'm a pharmacist, you have to forgive me. He has put about 4 cubes of sugar in your cup. You are lucky. You know, I graduated in pharmacy, so sometimes when I see people taking Fanta, in particular, I get, I chilled, I hope you will stop taking these Fantas and these energy drinks. They're not good for you. I mean, they basically destroy your health. I mean, there is nothing like water, the fresh water. You can take Zobo, you can take a number of other natural, but please stop taking these fizzy drinks. They kill you. I hope Dr. Safia, you are not going to provide Fanta here. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, let me come back to my point. You see, uh, when Asma'u was at 11, the hijrah and the jihad started. So you can imagine an 11-year-old girl moving with a caravan from one village to one town, and almost for 8 years, when she became like a young lady, she did not know peace. But it is in those same circumstances that they were still reading and writing. And she mastered, of course, she spoke Fulfulde, that was her mother tongue, but she was fluent in Hausa more than her father, and this is why she translated. He was not fluent in Hausa. I don't think he ever wrote in Hausa. He wrote in Arabic and he wrote in Fulfulde. But so it was her job to translate it to Hausa. She could also speak Tamashek. She also speaks Zabarma. So she was multilingual. And interestingly, somebody compared, because she was a contemporary of the mother of Abraham Lincoln, Nancy Lincoln, who was born 1784 and died 1818, when Abraham Lincoln was just about 9 years old. Nancy Lincoln, may her soul rest in peace, she was not even literate. Now, if you compare that at that day and age here in Africa, you have a lady of the same age group who could speak 5 languages, who wrote in 3 languages, and who wrote this number of works. So it tells you something. It tells you that this idea that we were backward and that Africa now is trying to catch up with America. No, it's actually America and the rest of Europe that's supposed to be catching up with us. Because whatever you see in Europe is the product of Muslim scholars. I will not go into this, it's a very big field of European intellectual history, but if you check, you find that Europe was in the dark ages until Muslims came into Spain. And they came to Spain from Africa, not from Saudi Arabia. They came from an area that is now more of southern Morocco and Mauritania. The Almoravids movement, early 11th century, that went into Spain and took over the whole of southern Spain and made it a Muslim polity called the Andalus. A lot of the scholars that you read their books were not Arabs, they were European Muslims, like Shifa of Qadi Iyad, like Bidayat al-Mujtahid, when you have al-Muqtasid of Ibn Rushd, like a number of books, Ibn Hazm. All these are Andalusian scholars. Now they wrote in Arabic because Arabic was the language of scholarship until the 18th,
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Artificial boundaries separated us. So part of the Sokoto Caliphate is in Cameroon. In Burkina Faso, part of it is in all this, of course, Niger, a lot of it is in Niger. And so it's not just, the Sokoto Caliphate within Nigeria. In fact, the size of the Sokoto Caliphate is the same size of present-day Western Europe. So imagine the whole of Western Europe. This was the size of the Sokoto Caliphate, about 2 million square meters, or square miles, I think, or square miles. So the point I'm making is that this is the context how grew and did what she did. Now, I think what is important for us is to now come back to Asma'u herself. Her contribution is enormous. And as some of you may have heard, and I sent you the clip, and I hope you it will be shared. As we speak now, as we speak now, there are 7 states in the United States where there is the movement of Entaru by Muslim American women. In fact, non-Muslim women have joined, especially African Americans who are looking for models from Africa. And because they have been denied the history of Africa, they thought Africa is nothing but jungle. This is what they told them. But now that they know, they have started movement. We have them in Boston, in San Diego, in California, in a number of Texas, a number of American cities. And if you have been following the news, every year the judges in the American states will come to Sokoto to be blessed by the Sultan of Sokoto. So if you like, the Sokoto Caliphate has now extended, and of course it has extended even before then, but we don't have time to discuss that, maybe later. So what I want us to do now, just 2 more things. I want us to understand, and I think study, the content of the works of Asma'u. She spoke a lot about the stability of the family, and she did a lot in explaining to women how the polygamous system, because I saw in your flyer you are going to discuss, she did a lot to explain to women how polygamy should work within the Islamic setting. And they had no complexes Most of you people, the women who, and even men who have gone to Western education, you have developed a complex for polygamy. You think polygamy is demeaning for a woman. And I think you are all missing the point. Because you're going by the thinking of, and young men also, their concept of love is again that of Europeans, which is very narrow and very lustful, and it doesn't last. And so we have to really come back and be ourselves. I am a product of polygamous home, and I can see, especially with this benefit of hindsight now, our mothers did not go to school. They did not know the Quran they knew enough to pray. They had the basic fiqh, how to wash, how to do the wudu, how to do a number of things, but they were not scholars, and they were not pursuing scholarship. But I noticed they were busy reciting the poems of Nana Asma'u, and that was their source of knowledge and their source of inspiration. And if you see their behavior, you will think that they are the Sahaba. Why? Because I am an example of this. I did not know my biological mother until I was about finishing my primary school. I grew up in my stepmother's home or house, believing that she was my mother. And even after I knew, and nobody called me and said, sit down, this is your mother. No. I was in the university, I had an accident, I was admitted in the hospital. My stepmother was still in the village then. My mother was the one in the town. But my mother never visited me, not once, in the hospital. It was my stepmother who was told that your son has had an accident, he's in the hospital. She came back, she came into the city, stayed with my mother, and she would go to the hospital at the visiting hours at 4 p.m. then. She would be with me until 6, and then she would come back to tell my mother that I'm getting better. My mother never dared to step, beyond her. And when I got out of the hospital and I was supposed to recover before I went back to the university, I didn't stay with my mother. I went to the village and stayed in her room until I got better. When I was getting married, the role that mothers play, my mother did not touch anything. It was my stepmother that I was relating to that did everything. One interesting thing, in the house of my stepmother, I had seniors. That is my senior sister, who is still alive. She would not take any decision, even if her own biological children come to say, okay, we need to move you to this. She would not. She would say, have you told Usman? Ask Usman to come. She would have to hear from me before she does anything. Now this was what we saw. I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but I hope this is going to be helpful. So one of other stepmothers that we had, we noticed that her relationship with our mother was particularly cordial. So at one time I started asking my mother, could you be related somewhere at your own background? Because the way she respects, even after our father had died, they were relating to each other in a very cordial manner. So this stepmother will now visit my mother, and they normally would joke among themselves, but this particular one would never reply. She would just smile. She was behaving like her daughter. So we kept wondering, what is it? So I asked my mother, I said, we noticed your relationship is different. So can you let us know what happened? She said, it's not your business, Usman. I had to keep, one time she got tired. She said, okay, you have worried me about this. Sit down, I'll tell you what happened. And she said, when your father married her, she was from one of these royal houses where they are not allowed to cook because there are people who cook for them. So when she came to a house, in the house, in a big house, she could not cook. There was no way she could. So anytime it's her time to cook and run the family, I stepped in and did all that for her for a number of years until she became completely able to do that, and then I surrendered to her. And this is her, if you like, her teacher, isn't it? And this is how they were relating. But let me remind you again what I said. You see, what we find with our mother, they were constantly reciting the poem of Nana Asma'u. It was their source of knowledge and their source of inspiration. So Nana Asma'u did wonderful things in stabilizing the family and creating a very, if you like, cordial atmosphere in the family and strengthening those kind of relationships. So I think it's important we study the content deeply and get the ideas, not just eulogizing or just sermonizing, the figure. Much as she deserves it, but I think what we need from her and what she would be happy is the content of what she has actually put out there. So finally, I would encourage all of you to go back and read your history. Anybody who does not know his history has no identity. The colonial curriculum that we have read from primary, secondary, university has been deliberately designed to hide our history so that we look up to Europeans. There is nothing to look up to Europeans. Whatever Europeans claim to have, if it is good, give it to me. I will trace to you the actual source in Islamic scholarship, including artificial intelligence that is very mesmerizing now. Artificial intelligence is built on algorithm. Who created algorithm? It was Al-Khwarizmi. He lived, around the 750s. He was the one who created it. Without Al-Khwarizmi, they would not know. All this science and technology, immunization, everything they took from us. And some of you studying, anybody studying economics here? Anybody studying economics? Nobody? Okay, fine. And you may have heard the fiction that Adam Smith is the father of modern economics, or father of economics, in fact, isn't it? Adam Smith was famous for that thing they call division of labor. It was that thing that brought him out. But division of labor that Adam Smith was famous for, he actually got from Imam al-Ghazali, and the records are there. And that's how they give you the impression that they have done this, they have done that. But everything that you're looking for is within Islam. Muslim scholars have done it. You don't need any model outside, but you have to read. And I hope with the faculty here, we'll start the process of decolonizing our curriculum and indigenizing our knowledge. Thank you very much. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Thank you very much, sir. We have learned a lot of things from our father. May Almighty Allah reward him abundantly. So, thank you so much, Baba, for a wonderful stage intellectual session. Now, I would like to invite Her Excellency Ambassador to properly introduce Baba so that young persons, in the room will get to know Baba better. Thank you so much. I think that
Okay, Alhamdulillah, I would say, for that very insightful, it's a lot more than just an introduction or even setting the stage. Baba's presentation, as always, is always rich with a lot of diverse and dynamic content that even starts you thinking of other things beyond what's been discussed. So for the purpose of others that particularly our students. I have with me some of our level 100 students that are studying logic and philosophy, including Islamic philosophy. And it's so interesting when we hear the roots and foundations of many contemporary findings, such as AI, being traced to the history of Islamic scholarship and philosophy. So that should inspire our young people to start thinking, in what ways can we be problem solvers? How can we be present in the present and in the future as present solvers, as problem solvers? So as I was I started to look for how to introduce Baba. I just said, AI, let us ask the master of information that will bring all sorts of information from everywhere. One of the most remarkable things that I found here, and it's so rare for someone to be introduced as a statesman. You can get politicians or leaders or whatnot, but the AI here describes Baba as a statesman. I don't know whether you know the significance, but I think we should really. So, his Dr. Usman Bugaje is a prominent Nigerian politician, intellectual, historian, academic, and civil society activist and leader from Katsina State, known for his active advocacy for good governance and public policy. He has served both in executive advisory roles and as a federal lawmaker. He has a background in pharmacy from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and then he transitioned into the social sciences, motivated by the desire to study African heritage outside the colonial era curriculum. Very relevant, right? Uh, he became a pivot, he pivoted to intellectual history and has a postgraduate and his master's degree in African studies. He completed his PhD thesis in intellectual history of West Africa from the Institute of African and Asian Studies at the University of Khartoum, Sudan. His doctoral research focused on Islamic renewal, Tajdid. And then he founded the Network for Justice, and then also a policy think tank. We have very few think tanks in Nigeria, the Arewa Research and Development Program, ARDP. He has numerous publications, and his political career got him to be elected to the House of Representatives between 2003 to 2007. Dr. Usman Bugaje is a dynamic and prolific statesman and an elder statesman from northern Nigeria. I don't know. This is like elder statesman. So last week we were discussing the crisis of Nigeria, and we were focusing on the crisis of northern Nigeria with a few colleagues of mine in Abuja during a workshop in which we were analyzing how to salvage the crisis we're in northern Nigeria. And one of the people there said, Sephia, insofar as your leadership programs cannot imbibe in the younger generation the understanding of the difference between a politician, a political leader, and a statesman, you would not be doing your job well. So I started discussing with him, can you come and give our students a discussion
a presentation on what it takes to be a statesman. And amazingly here, I see that description here. Thank you very much for coming to share your wealth of experience with us. And we look to hear the question that will elicit from this conversation. Over.
Thank you very much, ma'am. What we have here is Nana Asma'u of the late Sheikh Usman Fodio from Malama Zahara Umar.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Are we sleeping? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much. So I want to say I'm starting at a certain point with mixed feelings. Why? Because I feel and I know I am a student standing here, hearing Prof speak, and then seeing my lecturers here, and then my seniors here, my husband and everyone here. I know it can be quite difficult. So you pardon me, but I will try my best, inshallah. So my role and my duty here is to talk about Nana Asma'u as a daughter. And in order to do that, I had to go through literature to see what I can bring out so as to give a somewhat accurate representation of who she is as a daughter. But from the time Prof started speaking, I could see some places where I had probably not really, I may not have gotten them right due to what or the materials we're reading. In order to bring representation to life, I decided to get some kind of pictures just to depict what I'm talking about, and the stage and the area or the time that I'm talking about. So for Nana Asma'u, there's one popular picture that you will always see on the internet, and I just turned it to AI and I said, give me a younger version of Nana Asma'u, and it produced this picture. I know it is not accurate, but this is what I have. So Nana Asma'u Bint Fodio remains one of the most studied women in African history. She was born in 1793 in Egel, and she's said to be named after Asma Bint Abu Bakr. I'm sure most of us know her, Asma Bint Abu Bakr. Okay. I did the maths when I saw 1793, and then we're talking about her today in 2026. And I just said, you know, when I calculated, it's 233 years. And I was like, wow, we're sitting in this hall discussing or talking about a woman who died or who lived 233 years ago, but as we see, her legacy still continues. So Nana Asma was a twin. She was born with her twin brother, who is Hassan, and of course, as it is said, in a polygynous household. Hassan is said to have died early, and therefore there isn't really much about him. Her mother, or their mother, is Maimuna, and she died when Asma was approximately 2 years old. But the discussion we were having before this lecture, I think it must have been a bit earlier, because they said that was when she was just weaned or about to be weaned. She was still, you know, a baby then. She was later raised by her stepmothers, Aisha, who is commonly known as Gato or Gaddo, I'm not sure, and then Hawa, who is known as in Nagarka. And it was through them where she got, continued to get her moral and educational upbringing. Significant also is to mention that she had paternal aunts in the house, and the household where they lived, and there was Fatima and Hadiza, and of course a host of others, her sisters and other members of the household who she benefited from. And also her elder brother Muhammad Bello, who was, I think, somewhat of a pair to her, but they were not of the same mother. I think he's the son of Nagarka, and they were raised together, and that explains their closeness. So at the center of all this is her father, Usman Fodio, the primary instructor and her intellectual exemplar. Nana Asma'u passed away in 1864 at the age of 71, and she was buried at Hubari, which is in Sokoto, and the place is open for anyone who goes to Sokoto to go and have a look at their history and their background. So in trying to compare or to make us really appreciate who Nana Asma'u is, one of the things I did was to try and compare her with her contemporaries of that time, in other societies. And I attempted to compare her with women in Hausa land and women in Europe. But listening to Prof, maybe I should have been particular to take Spain. Probably that would give me a better picture. So the women in Hausa land at that time were just given the very basic to prepare them for marriage and what would be sufficient for them, to live life. And we'll know that even up to some years back, they would say that there's a particular portion or a particular part of the Quran that a woman is not supposed to go beyond or whatever it is, and then women were limited. And that's what the Hausa women at that time, this is what it indicates, that the major preparation was for marriage. Now, when we look at her contemporaries in Europe, we would see that even there they had what was called a doctrine that was called separate spheres, where there were activities and things that the men were supposed to do, and then things that the women were supposed to do. And women, even in Europe, were prepared or to be prepared for marriage. And therefore, what was expected for women to learn or do was music, dancing, things like that were considered as feminine. And therefore, you would see that even then, women who tried to overstep those boundaries were looked at in a certain kind of way. There's a quote or a word that they use, they call them blue stocking, in the sense that a woman is supposed to hide her knowledge and scholarship because it's not something that was considered as feminine in the society. Now, right at about this time, that we're saying that European women, Victorian women, were just being trained, to be feminine, to do things that were considered as feminine. Nana Asma'u was being actively trained to participate in state building, in mastering jurisprudence, fiqh, in mantiq, in poetry, and in a host of other things and activities in the society. So we truly have to appreciate that, because most of the time we look at Europe and we think they're far ahead of us, but when you look at it, the reality says something else, like was mentioned earlier. So Nana Asma'u, the household, and Prof has already mentioned that, was a kind of a very dynamic household, whereby the domestic space was intentionally cultivated, in the sense that everything that was happening there were learning points or were things that someone would become immersed into. Anyone who lived in the environment, you would see that would imbibe those kind of things or issues, or have a broader understanding of issues, current issues. So whether it was scholarship, whether it was debates, whether it was writing sermons, whether it was political meetings and whatever, that household was where everything happened. And I'd like to imagine that Asma'u took that in as a sponge. She soaked everything up. In that kind of household, knowledge was not separate from character. Everything was together. Not now that, sometimes we say, no, this kind of education or that kind of education, but it was just something that was, that happened all at once. So a child in this kind of environment would even learn without even knowing that they are learning. So the house is some sort of, we call it an Islamia, a madrasa or a school, and it was there again that the moral component of their lives and of the lives of those that they have touched was cultivated. And so therefore, would know, or as Prof has said, that large kind of family house. Even now, we have some houses that we would say are similar to that, especially in our villages. You go in through one door, and before you know it, there are 50 families or more living just within that same compound. So I'd like to imagine that that was the house that Nana Asma'u grew up in. There were uncles, there were brothers, there were visitors, there were refugees, there were scholars, there were students, there was everything there, and everything was happening there all at once. Now, to also understand Nana Asma'u, we have to look at the father-daughter pedagogy. That's the father-daughter kind of education, how she was educated. Her father was the cornerstone of her intellectual identity, and he viewed the family as the center of social reform, in the sense that the family is what would bring about the changes, if done right or if nurtured right, is what will bring about the changes that we will see or that will move the society forward. And he argued in his book, Bayanul Wujub al-Hijrah, that the correction of a nation begins with the correction of the household. Meaning that once the household, the foundation is strong, then you can build anything on it and it will continue to flourish and it will continue to foster. So society is viewed as an extension of individual families, and therefore establishing justice, piety, and education within the home is a prerequisite for building a just state. What kind of method did he teach Nana Asma'u with? It wasn't just rote memorization, what we do. We read and we tell a child to repeat. It was much more than that. It was a kind of study there was a dialogue between her and the father, where she could question. We've learned that she would even translate some of his works, where she would ask questions and where she would be guided. So it was a kind of one-on-one thing, going back and forth between her and the father. And therefore, we would see that even in his treatise, Nur al-Bab, is a text that condemns the neglect of women's education. And you would see that because he was really interested, he trained Nana Asma well and he guided her through the steps of earning knowledge. And of course, like I said earlier, with the assistance of other members of the household. So the focus was on education, literacy. She had legacy through the family, which was exemplified in the house, and so on and so forth. Now, what's the impact that had on Nana Asma'u, and why we are talking about her today? We'll see that her upbringing, from the private tutoring to her public, the public sphere, we'll see that it echoed or it showed the kind of discipline and her level and depth of education, her level and depth of piety, her level and depth of understanding of social issues in the environment at that time. And she, in trying to teach or to educate, she wrote a lot of poems that were used to teach other women. And one of the things that she was a very, very proud daughter. And therefore, in one of her poems, Tabbat Hakikan, you would see that she even spoke, very well, or she placed her father in a very good position. Where part of what she said, the translation of the song, or of the poem, I'll just read a bit of it. It says, Kudage wajen neman ilimi, ku ci gaba da koya. shi yake ba ɗan adam duk abin da yake bukata. Kada ku zauna a tsakanin jahilai da masu son zuciya. Ku rike abin da ubanmu ya koya mana, tabbas hakika, domin ku tsira daga wutar jahannama, tabbas hakika. This is just one of the sections or one of the areas that the poem, of course, it's divided into different stanzas and whatever. And why I mentioned it, number one, see how she talks about the fear of God, and see how a level to show her piety, but see how proud she was of her father. Kurike abinda ubanmu ya koya mana, her father, and then the father of others. You understand what I mean? So, because Shehu Usman Fodio was a father to all. We see that again, that the environment was an environment of situated learning, which is a theory in education that was developed that posits that learning is inseparable from activity, context, and culture in which it takes place. That everything comes together and is fused together in the context of the situation, that of the environment of the time. And we have learned again that because they were always on the move, it was like the classroom, the library, you know, the education, the etiquettes, and everything was moving with them. So wherever they were, education was situated there, and education was happening, and therefore, at each point of her life, she was educated. She was quadrilingual, it has been said. It is said that Arabic she would use for scripture, classical scholarship, and connecting to the wider Islamic world, reading the books and reading manuscripts. Full day is what was used for intimate family discussions in the house. Hausa, because the environment was mostly Hausa-speaking environment, and Tamashek, because it's part of their heritage. And now I have added Zabarmanchi to it, as I've learned from Prof. So therefore, we would see that there is in her writings, you would see so much maturity in the way she writes. And then when we look at it, and we study her life as a whole, Nana Asma'u memorized the Quran, like what said earlier. Some sources said 10, and then I saw 13 again. So I wrote down 10 to 13, but I'll go with Prof that it's 10. Yes, as Prof has said, it's 10, maybe that's more correct. And you see that just look at the age, and look at the depth of knowledge and what, you know, and how she learned and the kind of person that she was at that age. And then imagine yourself at that age and what you were doing or in what situation you were, to be able to understand it better. Now, so the house was a kind of, you know, it was a very active place. And therefore, Nana Asma'u, because I was worried, is it just education? I was looking for other things that made Nana Asma'u who she was. And of course, I found that Nana Asma'u was also part of, you know, handling the household logistics, food supplies, and medical care for refugees and wounded soldiers as their family moved across sessions. So she learned to organize a large household that catered to scholars, refugees, and students. And then she was known again to have some sort of crafts. She learned spinning. I think she kati. Yeah, she learned kati, spinning, weaving, medicine, midwifery, and home economics. Can you imagine? If Nana Asma was here now, I think in the UK they would not know where to place her, because it was like she had mastered everything, and she did all that within the confines of her family and in the home. Now, how would this help us when we study how Nana Asma grew up? What's the impact, or what should we learn from her life? So the first I said is daughters as intellectual heirs. in the sense that we have to keep mentoring girls, providing them with intellectual challenges and celebrating scholarly potential of our girls in the society to encourage, intellectualism, studying, education, and being active members of the society. Now, I also said the home as a site of intellectual formation because we learned that Nana Asma'u became who she is. I speak to her in the present because of the home. And because of the home and the different influences that she found or that she had within the home. Number three, I said we really have to go back to the integration of knowledge where we would put, different factors or bring different aspects of life into how we cultivate and we raise our young girls in the society. And then, of course, we cannot talk about Nana Asma'u without the collective power of mentorship, where she learned from everyone. Now we have single families, everyone, just trying to keep to themselves. But we know that Nana Asma'u benefited from all the people that lived within their compound. Of course, again, the integration of faith and character formation, whereby faith is not different from character. Sometimes we read some things, but we're unable to imbibe them in the way we lead our lives or in our daily activities. We see it as something alien. And that's why, I don't know if I've been able to do that. I try to humanize Nana Asma'u to see that, because when we talk about Sahabai and we talk about people, you think that they're a different category or different set of people. Yes, there's something that sets them apart. But let's all understand that there are people that we can emulate their lives. Number six is the moral discipline as leadership training, because Nana Asma'u was raised for something or for leadership in the society, and therefore she learned how to be a leader, and as we would come to learn later from my sisters, how she was able to use the skills that she had learned. The next is language as a tool for inclusion. You will see that most of us, apart from our even mother tongue, a lot are struggling with even English. And then you would see that again we have other languages that we can benefit from immensely, and we do not, pay attention to it. How many of us, for example, speak Arabic fluently or can read and understand Arabic text? So we see even at this we are limited, and you can see how when you look at Nana Asma'u, you would be able to say that Nana Asma'u was truly a great woman. She would understand and she would read text in other languages and discuss in other languages, and that made her really great. I've talked about growing up in diverse family structures, and the next is Nana Asma'u daughters as active participants. Usually we try to put down girls or our daughters, and we don't really encourage them. I would like to say that daughters are not just passive participants or recipients of knowledge, and that if the situation is right, if you will be able, to keep to the rules of Islam, to be able to do what is right, to be able to practice modesty and kunya and all those, and and all other things. The sky, there's nowhere that you cannot reach. We're talking about Nana Asma'u, who died 233 years ago. And then last but not the least is the integrational investment in daughters' education, where we say we'll continue to fight for and ask for daughters to be encouraged, for daughters to be educated, so that it will shape the society as a whole. So thank you very much. We have learned that Asma'u Fodio cautioned that women should not be used or kept as household utensils. We have learned from Nana Asma'u's challenge. We have learned from Nana Asma'u's life and the modern assumptions about girl child education and family life and leadership formation. Also what her upbringing demonstrates as a daughter and how she was able to use that to her advantage. And then, of course, it reminds us that daughterhood, when guided by vision and principle, can be the first and foremost formative school of leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
The chair, sorry, the chair will take over.
I thought you Angama. And thank you, Malama, Zahra. We know more about Nana Asma'u because she outlived all the daughters of Sheikh Ismail Fodio, with the exception of Nana Mariam. Nana Mariam died in 1885, 20 years after Nana Asma'u, 20 or 21 years after. But one point we need to emphasize is that the Sheikh had 37 children, 21 males, 16 females. All of the females were taught. All of them were educated. His eldest daughter, Khadija, was one of the teachers of Nana Asma'u. His youngest daughter, Maryam, was married to Emir of Kano, Dabo. When Dabo died, she went back to Sokoto. They don't have any children with Dabo, but she remarried in Sokoto and had other children. I think it's good to sometimes look at other children, the wives, the daughters, the aunties, children of Abdullahi Fodio, of Muhammad Bello. Then it gives you a bigger picture of how they were able to handle the caliphate, how they ran the caliphate. Some of them from their homes only, some of them from their villages, some of them have a network of the entire room that Nana Asma'u established later. So maybe we listen to the second one.
Thank you.
Nietzsche.
What we have in the agenda, Nana Asma'u was a wise.
I'm trying to send the Sorry, I'm trying to send the document. I'm trying to send you the document.
Anata ake projector ko Anata?
Anata.
Bluetooth ake connection to?
Ko zai send me mata sai ka dora. No mistake na tura da wuri. Wasu wayoyin ne suke ta shiga. Okay. Maryam. Maryam, I'm sending to you so that we don't waste time. Okay. Before they get ready with the projector, maybe I should continue. Alhamdulillah, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa halul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. My sister Malama Zahra has laid the foundation, taking cue from what Baba has done, and I will build on that to discuss and look at Nana Asma'u as a wife. And my outline after the introduction looks at the marriage alliance and how she navigated polygyny as a wife and the intellectual continuity through marriage, as well as political partnership. I'll also look at the private sphere as the scholarly foundation, because that is the theme of today's symposium. before concluding. Nana Asma'u Bint Fodio, born, the dates of course have, yes, next, third slide, after this, 1793 to 1864, of course it's not exact because historians give these dates and that dates, but the mathematical calculation given what has happened, generally these are the dates that are considered. Occupies a unique position in the intellectual and political history of 19th century West Africa. She is the daughter of Sheikh Usman and Fodio, the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate, and she's widely recognized for her own contributions as a scholar, a poet, an educator, and an advocate for women's Islamic education. However, despite the fact that so much scholarly attention has focused on her literary works and the establishment of the entire educational movement, her life as a wife and co-wife also deserves careful consideration, because as we noted, the private sphere is the foundation of the public sphere. And like my senior sister said, she was thinking what more could be said about Nana Asma'u. So that really got us thinking, what aspect of Nana Asma'u are we going to look at? So we tried to go back to the private sphere, the home front, to look at Nana Asma'u. So rather than concerning her intellectual development, marriage provided a social and institutional framework within which she expanded her scholarly influence. Her experience therefore demonstrated that wifehood within an Islamic scholarly household could serve as a platform for religious leadership, educational reform, and political engagement. So we hope to answer some questions which by the end of this presentation. For instance, how did marriage serve as a platform rather than a barrier to Asma'u's intellectual work? We know, even from our current experience, that for some, as soon as they get married, she came bayanin ya ƙare. So, what was the nature of her partnership with her husband? How did she navigate her position as a co-wife within a polygynous household? How did she balance the demands of being both a scholar and a vizier's wife, or a waziri's wife? What does her example, and that is very, very important, what does her example offer to contemporary discussions on balancing family and intellectual pursuits? I hope we will learn some lessons from here. So I start with the first aspect in marriage alliance, where Asma'u was, or rather Gidad Usman El-Laima was chosen to be Asma'u's husband. And there were reasons, as she showed in her elegy for Gidado, where she talks about him and how, and his characters, his values, and how he was a companion to her. So the age of marriage is also subject to verification. Some will say 14, some will say 15, and the like, but around that time she was married. In one of the books I even saw 12 years, but 14 and 15 are the more dates that were given. Maybe two experts will confirm to us. It was both a personal union and a significant political and intellectual alliance within the nascent Sokoto Caliphate. Like many marriages among the scholarly and ruling elite of the 19th century Muslim West Africa, the union served a broader social and institutional purposes. It strengthened the ties between influential families committed to the religious reform movement initiated by Sheikh Usman and Fodio. Rather than being merely a domestic arrangement, the marriage contributed to the consolidation of the political, administrative, and scholarly foundations of the newly established Islamic State. Who is her husband? Gidada Lema was one of the most distinguished statesmen of the Sokoto Caliphate. He became the first non-waziri occupying the highest administrative office after the Caliph. That is like the Prime Minister of, is it the Prime Minister who? Of our days. As waziri, he served as the chief advisor to Sultan Muhammad Bello and played a central role in state administration, judicial oversight, diplomatic relations, and the implementation of the Caliphate's reformist policies. His reputation rested not only on political competence, but also on his scholarship, piety, and unwavering commitment to the ideals of the Sokoto reform movement. His combination of intellectual and administrative authority made him one of the most influential figures in the early history of the Caliphate. Before assuming the office of Waziri, Gidada had already distinguished himself during the Sokoto Jihad. He was a trusted companion of Muhammad Bello. Nana Asma'u's elder brother, as discussed by Malama Zahra'u, and later the second Sultan or Amir al-Mu'minin. His historical sources record that Gidado frequently served as a messenger, diplomatic envoy, and confidential representative of Sheikh Usman and Fodio and Muhammad Bello. These assignments required exceptional integrity, political wisdom, and literary competence, qualities that earned him the confidence of the leadership during a period of military campaigns, political negotiation, and state reformation, and that earned him the hand of Asma'u. His active participation in the jihad and the subsequent administration of the Caliphate placed him among the principal architects of the emerging Islamic polity. Against this historical background, the marriage between Nana Asma'u and Gidada Lema represented a strategic alliance that reinforced both political legitimacy and scholarly contribution. It united two individuals whose lives were dedicated to the intellectual and rigorous objectives of the Sokoto reform movement. And we will see how they worked together, conducted research, wrote the life of the Shehu, and so on. As the daughter of the founder of the Caliphate and wife of its chief administrator, Nana Asma'u occupied a unique position at the intersection of scholarship, governance, and religious authority. This position afforded her opportunities to contribute to the educational and moral development of the state while maintaining close contact with the highest levels of political leadership. Importantly, the marriage did not curtail Nana Asma'u's intellectual independence. On the contrary, it appears to have provided an environment, a conducive environment in which her scholarly pursuit flourished. Gidada's own commitment to Islamic learning created favorable conditions for Asma'u's continued literary production in Arabic, in Fulfulde, in Hausa. Throughout her married life, she composed poems, she wrote theological treatises, historical narratives, and educational texts that addressed a wide range of audiences, particularly Muslim women. Her prolific output after marriage demonstrates that scholarly activity remained central to her identity and was actively supported within her household. The partnership between Nana Asma'u and Gidada also exemplifies the collaborative nature of leadership within the Sokoto Caliphate. Whereas Gidada contributed primarily through political administration and governance, Asma'u advanced the reform movement through education, through literary production, and through the cultivation of religious knowledge among women. They have all spoken about the Entaru movement and how she was able to educate rural, hard to reach women through the judges and other members of the Entaru movement. Whereas Gidado contributed, okay, their complementary roles therefore reflected the broader vision of the Sokoto reforms. Sorry. I okay, I'll just skip. Okay. The marriage alliance, I think we have talked about that. Rather than making a transition from public scholarship to private domesticity, marriage expanded the institutional framework within which she exercised her leadership. So I'll go to the next section, navigating polygyny. Nana Asma'u's experience as a wife must also be understood within the institution of the polygyny. What I'm trying to say is that she was not the only wife. I think Baba has spoken about that, where he said Western education has made us now to be only one wife, to only think that the Gani Babu Kari. So we hope that we will change that perspective for those that hold that position. A legally recognized and socially established form of marriage in Muslim West Africa. Among the rural and scholarly elite of the Sokoto Caliphate, polygynous marriages often serve not only domestic purposes but also political, diplomatic, and social functions. Rather than viewing polygyny solely through contemporary assumptions, like Baba has mentioned, of rivalry and female subordination, it is important to examine how women such as Nana Asma'u negotiated these family structures while exercising significant intellectual and public authority. We were discussing with Dr. Mariam whether Nana Asma'u was the first or the second. You know, we had to navigate through so much historical accounts and so on and so forth, but we couldn't say whether she's the first, the third, and so on. Probably she's not the first. Yes. So whichever position, she is a co-wife. And how does she navigate her position as a wife in the household? That is the most important. So, historical records indicate that Gidada Lema, sorry, it keeps taking me, okay, I banner here, no, had at least two documented wives. Those were the only ones I found. I'm not saying they're his only wives, but I saw the name of Magajia Nana Asma'u and Magajia Halimatu. These are the ones I saw, but we can be corrected. And Magajia Halimatu was recorded to be a daughter of Maila Musa, the emir of Zazzau. These marriages reflected a broader political strategy characteristic of pre-colonial Muslim states, where marital alliances strengthened relationships among influential families, reinforced political loyalties, and fostered cooperation between regional centers of authority. In this context, marriage functions as an instrument of statecraft as much as a domestic institution. Within this polygynous household, so we're seeing how she will navigate her role as a wife, as a co-wife. She occupied a distinctive position. As the daughter of the Caliph and the wife of the Wazir, she stood at the intersection of religious authority, political legitimacy, and scholarly prestige. Her lineage conferred exceptional symbolic status, while her own intellectual accomplishments established an authority that was independent of both her father's and her husband's positions. I think that is very important to note. Consequently, her influence within the household and the wider society derived from a combination of inherited prestige and unscholarly distinction. I think I skipped something here. So this intersection of family, scholarship, and governance created a unique space in which Nana Asma'u exercised leadership without holding formal political office. She had no political office, but she exercised leadership, depending based from the roles that she had. Her household was simultaneously a family residence, an intellectual center, and an extension of the administrative elite of the caliphate. From this setting, she continued to compose poetry, mentor students, correspond with scholars, and provide religious instruction to women. Her educational initiatives, particularly the Enter Room movement, demonstrate her domestic responsibilities coexisted with a vigorous public life devoted to scholarship and community reform. Kinshasa? In her instructional poems for women and used within the entire educational movement, Asma'u outlines the moral and practical aspects of the wifely role. In Tariq al-Jannah, The Path of the Truth, she addresses women's daily responsibilities, situating household management, hospitality, and fidelity as forms of active worship if performed with sincere intention. So here, as now is talking about the purpose of human beings. Allah has not created men and jinns but to worship him, and she also talked about ikhlas, sincerity, as well as niyyah, that is nothing innamal a'malu bin you see her putting all of this together and teaching the woman. In Tembe al-Ghafili, a warning for the negligent, she emphasized the reciprocal duties of spouses, as noted in Sharia, highlighting that a wife's domestic contribution is equal in dignity to the public governance carried out by men. Her authority did not diminish with widowhood. Instead, she continued to serve as one of the Caliphate's foremost religious scholars and educators. Her writings from this period reveal sustained engagement with questions of piety, moral conduct, governance, and education of women. She retained the respect of successive generations of rulers and scholars, confirming that her influence rested on intellectual achievement and religious credibility, rather than solely on her marital relationship. Her life demonstrates a woman of exceptional learning, which could who maintained intellectual autonomy within a polygynous household, when supported by an environment that valued scholarship and religious service. And I think Malama Zarau has talked about that environment, also about that environment that valued scholarship and religious service. While the historical record does not provide extensive details about the interpersonal dynamics among Gidado's wives, I checked and checked and checked because I said navigating polygyny, but it consistently portrays Nana Asma'u as an active participant in the educational and religious life of the Caliphate throughout her marriage and widowhood. The silence regarding domestic conflict combined with the continuity of her literary and educational output, suggests her scholarly vocation remained largely uninterrupted. Nana Asma'u's experience, therefore, complicate, complicate simplistic portrayals of polygyny as inherently oppressive or incompatible with women's leadership. Her life illustrates that the impact of polygynous marriage depended largely on the social, intellectual, and religious environment in which it was practiced. In the Sokoto Caliphate, where the pursuit of Islamic knowledge was regarded as a collective obligation, a fardul kifaya, and scholarly households functioned as centers of learning, polygyny could coexist with women's educational advancement and public influence. For Nana Asma'u, wifehood within a polygynous family became not a constraint upon her aspirations, but a context in which she continued to share the religious, intellectual, and moral life of one of Africa's most significant Islamic societies. Like we say that polygyny is for the knowledgeable. It is when you are knowledgeable that you are able to exist and coexist within a polygyny in a harmonious way. And uh, going to the intellectual continuity through marriage, I decided to start with a statement by Shehu. And Baba has even given me the context where he said Shehu did not stay in his zawri for people to come to him. Rather, he went out to explain to them. And one of Shehu's topics is about the Muslim woman and how they should be educated. In this quotation, he noted, most of our educated men leave their wives, their daughters, and their captives morally abandoned, like beasts, without teaching them what God prescribes should be taught them, and without instructing them in the articles of the law which concern them. Thus, they leave them ignorant of the rules regarding ablutions, prayer, fasting, business dealings, and other duties which God commands that they should be taught. In essence, they are not taught what they should be taught, but rather something else is given, not that they are not taught, but they are given more prominence. And so Shehu talked a lot about that and a lot about how men treated their wives. One of the most remarkable features of Nana Asma'u's life is the continuity of her intellectual career after marriage. In many historical societies, marriage has been openly portrayed as a turning point that redirects women's energies to domestic responsibilities. Nana Asma'u's experience, however, presents a different narrative. Her marriage to Gidada Dalema neither interrupted nor diminished her scholarly vocation, as earlier mentioned. It provided an environment, a conducive environment. And historical evidence indicates that Nana Asma'u authored more than 60 works in both poetry and prose during her lifetime, the majority of which were composed after her marriage. Writing in Arabic, Fulfulde, Hausa, and Ajami, she addressed a wide range of subjects, including Quranic exegesis, theology, jurisprudence, ethics, history, women's education, devotional literature, and political counsel. Her multilingual scholarship enabled her to reach audiences from different linguistic and educational backgrounds, thereby extending the reformist ideals of the Sokoto Caliphate beyond the scholarly elite. Her literary productivity throughout marriage illustrates that domestic life did not curtail her intellectual creativity, but coincided with some of the most significant phases of her scholarly career. Asma'u recognized that effective religious instruction required communication in languages understood by ordinary believers. So by rendering Quranic meanings and religious teachings into Fulfulde and Hausa, she helped bridge the gap between scholarly learning and popular religious practice. Her translations and explanatory writings form a part of wider program of educational reform. The intellectual partnership between Nana Asma'u and Gidada Elena extended beyond mutual encouragement of scholarship to active collaboration in teaching. Historical accounts indicate that the couple held regular classes at their residence in Sokoto, where they instructed students in Islamic sciences, history, and moral education. Their home thus became more than a private household. It evolved into an important center of learning within the Caliphate. These educational gatherings reflected the reformist conviction that the acquisition and transmission of knowledge constituted a collective religious responsibility shared by both men and women. I want to move to the next. So Nana Asma'u collaborated with her husband in Raud al-Jinan, Maiden of Paradise, to document the life of her father, Sheikh Usman dan Fodio, and she further translated this treatise into Hausa. The continuity of her scholarship during marriage also laid the foundation for her later establishment of the Entaru movement, a network of women educators dedicated to spreading knowledge throughout the Caliphate, as mentioned earlier. And the experience she gained through teaching in her own household prepared her to develop a more extensive educational system that reached women in rural and urban communities alike. Her domestic environment, therefore, served not as a limitation, but as the first institutional setting for a lifelong program of educational leadership. I'm sure you'll be tired, you are somehow tired of me talking about her domestic life, but because that is what we are trying to do, to link what she has done, what she has achieved to her domestic life. So the partnership between Nana Asma'u and Gidada Elena exemplified this model, illustrating how a scholarly household will become an important center for literary production. Next slide. Next slide. As a result of this intellectual continuity through marriage and partner, she wrote in Marcia Gidado, or Elegy for Gidado, in 1851, when after he died, that my heart is heavy with grief for Gidado, the noble one, the pillar of trust and integrity. He was my companion, my comfort, and my guide in faith. So from here we move to the political partnership, which I believe we have touched a little bit. She emerged. Nana Asma'u's influence within the Caliphate was not merely derivative of her husband's office. Rather, she emerged as an independent intellectual and moral authority whose counsel was respected by successive generations of the Sokoto leadership, as mentioned earlier, and her life demonstrates that political influence in the Caliphate could be exercised through scholarship, education, and religious guidance, as much as through formal administrative office. Gidada Ellena's position as the first non-wazir placed, is it a first name? So what is the role of Abdullah? Placed him at the apex of the Caliphate's administrative structure and as chief advisor to Sultan Muhammad Bello and later rulers, he was responsible for supervising state affairs, coordinating governance, and implementing the reformist vision of Sheikh Usman and Fodio. This office brought Nana Asma'u into close proximity with the political process that shaped the development of one of 19th century Africa's influential Islamic states. Living within this environment afforded her regular interaction with scholars, jurists, administrators, military commanders, and members of the ruling family, further strengthening the intellectual networks through which she pursued her educational mission. So I will move. Um, Even in advanced age, she remained a revered authority whose influence extended across all the cycles. Her continued activity after widowhood demonstrates her public identity was not founded on marital status alone, but a lifetime of scholarship and service to the Muslim community. Her experience therefore broadens conventional understanding of political participation in Muslim Africa. Although she held no formal governmental office, as I mentioned earlier, she exercised significant influence through knowledge, moral authority, and educational leadership. So I will move to the last aspect, the private sphere as the scholarly foundation. Perhaps the most distinctive feature of Nana Asma'u's married life was her ability to transform the domestic sphere into a vibrant center of intellectual activity. Contrary to interpretations that portray the household as a space removed from public scholarship, the home of Nana Asma'u and Gidad al-Laima functioned as one of the principal sites for the production, transmission, and preservation of knowledge. In this environment, Nana Asma was, as a wife, was not confined to private domesticity. Instead, it provided the institutional setting from which she exercised her greatest educational influence. The household was not simply a residence, but it was an academy of learning. Um, this phenomenon reflected the broader educational culture of the Sokoto reform movement, and Sheikh Usman Fodio and his associates regarded the pursuit of knowledge in as a religious obligation incumbent upon every Muslim, irrespective of whether they are a male or a female. Consequently, the boundaries between domestic life and formal education were um, um, uh, homes belonging to leading scholars frequently served as centers of instructions where family members, disciples, visitors, and aspiring scholars gathered to study Islamic uh, sciences. Nana Asma'u inherited and expanded this tradition, making her household uh, an integral component of the caliphate's intellectual infrastructure. I think that for us is a typo. So I will go to the final concluding remarks. Ultimately, Nana Asma'u's domestic life challenges the conventional dichotomy between the private and the public spheres. In the Sokoto Caliphate, the home could simultaneously serve as a family residence, a center of scholarship, a site of political consultation, and an institution of religious education. Through her leadership, within this environment, Nana Asma'u demonstrated that wifehood was fully compatible with intellectual authority and public influence, the connection or the intersection between the private and the public sphere. Her household stands as an enduring example of how domestic spaces, when shaped by a commitment to learning, could function as scholarly foundations that nurtured religious knowledge, preserved literary traditions, and educated future generations of Muslim scholars. Thank you very much. Jazakumullahu khairan. Kibata ko za ta corrections.
Thank you.
As I was reading, I got some corrections.
Maybe one or two things I want to say on this is that Nana Asma'u was very close to the center. The Khalifa and the Wazir, while they were handling affairs of government, she also had a to look at the other side, women and children, what are their problems.
Yes.
So that is how she was able to come up with the Entaru. The Entaru is like, in addition to teaching children in the home, she established that organization to train those who will go out to train others. Because education outside the Jama'ah was not taken care of. Women were not taught, even men were not well educated. Even in our time, I remember some years back, 2 years ago, we said it here, when they were interviewing people who want to go to Hajj. Some of them were asked 5 pillars of Islam, and the Emir of Kano was one of them. So, and they were not active. They didn't know, and they were Muslims. So when she saw this problem, she has this ability to identify a problem and then pursue solutions. Our problem is we identify problems, but we don't implement. So year in, year out, we come back, we repeat the same thing, and then you don't see any changes. I mean, at this time, somebody is saying the Emir of Kano is one of the pillars of Islam. Professor Bagaji is a small. So she has this ability to identify a problem of her time and then solve that problem. And now, over 150 years after her death, people are still seeing those solutions, and we can utilize those solutions for our present crisis, because we have multiple problems now. And this is why learning about what they did is still useful. They solved the problem of their community, and then other communities after them are still benefiting from what they had done. So the last part is on as a mother. Oh? Okay. Okay, so by Dr. Mariam Imam, the Deputy Director of Training Center for Gender Studies.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please, let's wake up. Let's have, let me have your concentration here, please. Okay, so my name is Mariam Biman, and I'm here to present Nana Asma'u Motherhood. Just a recap. Nana Asma'u is popularly known as Warigari. In some of the literature, you find her known as Wardeji, even though I know we had discussions as to whether she is Wardeji or it is Mariam, her junior sister, that is referred to Wardeji. But we know Shata, the pop house singer, has referred to Sardona Sokoto as Jikam Wardeji, and we want to believe that it's Nana Asma'u he's talking about. She was born in 1793 and she grew up between family. She was tutored by the Sheikh himself, her grandmother, and otherwise within the household. She was a well-organized lady in her matrimonial home, having been part of the management of over 100 people in her father's house. And the jihad started in 1804 while she was still at home. And women folk engaged in making large containers and for water and food to be taken to the field, to the war fronts, and they also took care of the ill, and they nursed the wounded that came back from the battlefield. So she got married around 14 or 15 years. I know Jim Boyd and Mark, Beverly Mark, they mentioned 15 years, but if you calculate the years, you see it as 14. So she married her brother's very good friend, the Wazir Usman Gidad Al-Laima, who was, of course, the Waziri of Sokoto Caliphate at that time. That was a very strategic political alliance. You know, in those days, even up to recent years, you find alliances between households whereby either influential or rich houses marry between each other, or the royal houses, they would marry to each other. This gave them this edge. I had a discussion with one of the emirs some time back, and he said to me, you see, whenever I have a proposal, I know definitely I'm going to have backing of so and so, because he knows they have political alliance, they have marriage as an alliance, so he knows who and who will even back him even before he sets out for a certain journey. So that is a very strategic position and alliance, sorry, a very strategic alliance, and it was a partnership of scholarship and statecraft. After getting married, she did not retreat from public life. Nana Asma'u was known for giving advice to the Shehu himself. Shehu, in one of the stories that have been told about her karama, is that Shehu once complained or showed concern about a certain fight at Al-Alawa, and he was showing her how her brother Bello is suffering in the hands of those people in Al-Alawa, and she took garwashi, okay, a stick that was having fire, and she threw it and said, burn Al-Alawa. And it's, you know, they said they won that fight, having that the field got burnt. Okay, so that is one of her karama. And you find out that the home was not a separate sphere where, because they now interacted, okay, they did scholarship. She and her husband held classes on Islamic knowledge and history. So her position as the Waziri's wife gave her, placed her at the center of the caliphate politics. She was able to do a lot. She was always there to advise them. So you see, when we say women want a space on the table, when policies or when rules and regulations are being enacted, when we say women, we want women at the table. A woman was already at the table at the in the 19th century. That is very important. These are things that we're supposed to flaunt, okay? Because she would give her own version, looking at how women were able to. She would look at the ways that women would be affected by that decision that is going to be taken, okay? And Nana's counsel was sought by leaders far and wide. She had corresponding letters with people as far as Mauritania, okay? And just look at it, just take your mind back to 18 something, okay? When at the moment, if you are going to Mauritania, how long will it take you? Or if you are sending a letter to Mauritania, how long will it take to get there? I'm not saying email, okay? I'm saying letter. Okay, but then look at it in those years, how she was able to correspond with other countries, West African countries, Arabian countries. They all had letters showing she had correspondence with them. So Asma'u came into the Waziri household as either a second or third wife. We stand corrected on that, and that accorded her time for researches and writings and teachings. We know how wise women would say, yes, I'm the second wife or third wife, and that allows me time. When the husband is in the other house, I'm able to do one or two things of my own. Okay, that is what has happened with Asma'u. And she continued her scholarly work, uttering over 60 works and translating the Quran during one of her pregnancies. So Asma'u had, literature shows she has 6 children. Discussions would say she has 7, but then we have the years that 5 of her children were born. Okay, her first child is Abdul Qadir, who was born in 1810. I want you to mind the years that we are talking about here, because we are going to have a little bit of synthesis here. Okay, she got married, we said, in 1807, and she gave birth to her first child in 1810. So her marriage before she had her first child. Okay, then her second child came in 1820. That is how many years after the first child? 10 years. So you see the gap. Abdul Qadir would have been able to run around with Ahmadu, okay, the second child. He could be able to do a lot for him, okay. He is even more or less like a small father to him, okay. So you see that. Then Usman, the third child, came in 1829. That is how many years after the second one? 9 years. And how many years between him and his first brother? 19 years. So incidentally, Asma'u gave birth to Usman in 1829, and that was the same year that Abdul Qadir, the first child, gave birth to his own child. Yes, Abdul Qadir had already gotten married, probably at 17 or 18, and he himself, yes, now, you should be fathers. But so by 19, he had his own first child. So yes, 19 years, and she had given birth to her third child then. Okay, so Abdullah Bayero came next, and he came at 1832. So that's difference of 4 years. 3 years, 4 years, 3 years, okay. And then the fifth one, Muhammad Laima, came at 1834. Okay, those were quite close, but you could see that she had a spacing. So those in medical health, Professor Yusuf here would say she rested well, okay, so she can give birth again, okay, because of the spacing that she had. 10 years, 9 years is very good spacing, okay. So she took part in taking care of the family. Other children from other wives and other household members, we want to believe, yes, they lived in a very large household, because they said they had up to 100 people in their household. So that included their house helps, their barwa, marwa, bayi da barwa ko. So, and they had extended families with them. So very importantly, she was able to take care and teach the students, teach the children in the household what she taught her own children. She wrote the Quran, or she translated the Quran during her third pregnancy, and that was when her grandchild Halilu came from Abdul Qadir, and at the same time she gave birth to her third child. So we believe Nana Asma'u could manage large households. Look at her age when she got married. We said 14, 15, go? And the Shogu's household was thought to be like 100 people or so. And Nana was part of that management. So right from an early age, she was able to be a mother, in so many aspects. She was able to stand and, coordinate things, give the right instructions at the right time, okay? And I want to add that she established the legendary Entaru educational movement in 1840. So when you look at the time that she gave birth to her last child, we said her last child was in what? 1834. 6 years after was when she established the Entaru. So you look at it that this lady had a lot of time thinking about this thing. She saw it from society. She saw the problems that the society had. Okay, people needed to be educated. But since the women were not able to go to school, because maybe that time the concept of going to school was something different. That time, schooling was done where? In Zaure, right? People go to seek for knowledge with scholars. So women did not have maybe that same opportunity. So she started the entire movement to take the education to those women. So this entire were set of women that were called judges. Okay, she named them judges, Jaji. And these ladies come to her, learn, and she was able to write, sing, and she taught in 5 languages, where women could do their chores. Okay, you could be bathing a child, you could be cooking, or you could be pounding, and you just be singing. Sunnonin alwala guda nawa ne, sunnonin alwala guda bakwai ne, takwas ne, okay, and you start mentioning them. Okay, is how she does it. But of course, I'm not saying this Sinona Alola, she was the one that did it, that composed it. I'm giving you an example. So when you do this day in, day out, your children learn with you. Okay, in the poem I read, my sister mentioned the education. That education went as far as Daura. It's because within our own household, my own family house, we had women. We had this one lady that we believe or we know was part of the entire movement, because she came to read to the women. As in Hausa ya ce tazo ta biya musu karatu. Okay, she will come and read to them, and then it was like kind of like a Montessori program. Okay, where you go at your own pace. So she would read to this wife, she would then go and read to the next wife. And sometimes when one wife is reciting or singing her song, you find out the other wife saying, Zara, wallahi nan fa ba haka ake cewa ba. Kaza ake cewa, and then there will be little argument. Or this one will say a'a kaza ne, this one will say a'a kaza. To mu bar yayi lariya ta zo, za ta faɗi mana waye yake da gaskiya. So we had that, like we saw it live. Okay, so Entaru was a movement that she brought into life due to her experiences as a mother, and she mentored and organized women to educate and reform the society. Okay, so she did that with so much efficiency, and she was able to bring the family together. So she was also known as Uwargari, literally meaning mother of the community, okay, or community leader. And that came at a time whereby she was well known. She was known to be to have roles with the entire room, teaching and accommodating people. I could remember she talked about how other women that would convert to Islam and they come into their household, she would use their knowledge, she would use their expertise, okay, whatever you were doing in your last community. And they had a large community of Mbori, okay, whereby, and that was essentially why she even went into this scholarship. She felt the community had a lot of Mbori, and she wanted to disenfranchise that. She wanted to send it, out. She wanted to make people understand that this is a wrong path, that Islam is the true path. So that was why she now went on to continue advocating and teaching. Okay, so she became known as Walgari. After the death of her husband, sometime I think in 1850, she went to live with her son Abdul Qadir, who became the vizier. He became the wazir, and she went to live with him, and she advised him on so many political matters, having that some of the resolutions or some of the rules were even made with her in view. Okay, she knew when these things were happening, she knew the circumstances that brought them, so she could advise him accordingly. Asma'u Bint Fodio passed away in 1864 at the age of 71, making her the longest surviving member of the Shehu's family. She had this, I wanted us to look at it. You see, these days, girls don't like getting married early. They feel, I can't get married at 17. But see who married at 15, let's say, let's even use the highest bar, and see what she was able to achieve in her life. Okay, so it's not about getting married early, it's about your own focus, is about your own ability to put to action your thoughts in a good way, okay, to benefit society. Thank you very much.
So, maybe here what I would like to chip in is that Asma'u's children were all male, 5 I think. Most books will show 5. One of them died very young. 2 of them became wazirs. One became Dangaladima. The first one, I don't know what position he held. I've been asking Professor Sambo, the Waziri of Sokoto, I couldn't get through to get information. Now, the first Waziri of Sokoto was Abdullah Fodio. Gidado became the second when Bello became Khalil. So all the other descendants of all other Muslims were descendants of Gidado with Asma'u. He had other children with other wives, but the Wazirs were her line. So Professor Sambo Waziri, who is the 13th Wazir, I think now, is her direct descendant. Maybe we open for question, comments. So,
Asma'u knows this more than I do, but she wants me to say so. It's just that when you said Asma'u was the longest surviving, there was Maryam. There was also Isa Kwari. So there were a few others, you know. Yeah, Maryam and Nana Maryam. Exactly. But these are just for details and accuracy. But the substance of what you've said still stands. Exactly. So, Chair.
I next agenda. So, maybe we have something like question and comments. Question and Professor also. Zai Ibrahim.
Wai zai ɗan da sai an gama saboda aka tafi
ba za a gaba gaba ɗaya ko? Okay. So, okay, question, comments? Ina wannan. Bari mu gama da aiki.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I just wanted to, kind of reiterate or highlight something that I think our younger ones may not follow. We talked about Asma'u as a daughter, and as a wife, and as a what? As a mother. She was a sister. It's a very important point here. Yes, she was an aunt, but what I'm saying is that because she was fortunate, she's a daughter of Usman and Fodio. That's why we looked at her from that perspective, how she got the knowledge and the training through her father. She was the wife of Waziri Kidabo, who is the Wazir, that assistant, the direct advisor of Fodio. You understand? And then the mother, she gave birth to her children who became the lineage of all the Wazirs. But at the same time, her own brother became the Amir, and she was advising him on governance and leadership. So it's not like she was like Allah placed her in a very prominent position. And that's why you all keep hearing about this, what she has done and what is being discussed. I think it's very important to highlight these issues. And that is how Islam looks at every woman. She's first a daughter, therefore responsible to her father, and of course under his care. She now becomes a wife, who therefore is supposed to be taken care of by her husband, and then becomes a mother who trains her son, and consequently, if Allah gives her long life, the son or the brother will now take care of her at older age and son after she had trained them. And therefore that is why, in fact, we used to advise sisters, of course brothers, same thing. If anyone asks you about any decision concerning marriage, all you need to do is look at that person and ask yourself, will I be proud of him as a father? If he's the kind of person you'll be proud to say, this is my father, he's the right kind of person to marry. Will I be proud of him as a husband, or will I show him off as this is my husband wherever you go? Then will I be happy with him as a son? If you represent these three, yes, yes, yes. If there is any no in these three, there's a red flag. The same thing for the men. Is she a good? Will you be proud of her as a mother? Will you be happy to show her off as a wife? Will you be happy to have her as a daughter? So I'm saying this so that we contextualize the thing, so I don't also take too much time to talk.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, brothers and sisters. I'm very happy with these presentations. I'm very interested in women scholarship in Hausa land. The reason why in 1992 I was at Sokoto with Waziri Junaidu, and on my project to write on Nana Asma'u's collections in Arabic, which alhamdulillah I did it successfully. From that I understand that there is distortion in in women's scholarship of Hausa land, which notion is saying that in Hausa land women are not to be educated, and we didn't encourage them in education, but based on what is a reality and the fact of Islamic, women scholarship in Hausa land, it shows that there is a long history of Islamic scholarship in the Hausa land. Take for example, before the Caliphate, before the Fodio's movement, there is excellent women scholars. Take for example, Hani al-Abdusiya. The Hani of Abdusiya, she lived, I think, in 16th century or before then. She is contemporary to Abdullah Thiqa. Abdullah Thiqa lived before Walid Masani and Walid Murna of Katsina. As well, there is Sharifa Amina. Sharifa Amina, this information comes in the Al-Islam in Nigeria with Sheikh Usman bin Fodio, written by Adam Abdullahi Ilorin. So that woman is one of the famous teachers of Jibril bin Umar, the teacher of Usman and Fodio himself at Agadez. As well, there is Nana Ruqayya al-Fulaniya. She is among the grand mothers of Sheikh Usman and Fodio, and she is one of the scholars, women scholars, who taught Abdullah Dan Fodio and Usman Dan Fodio. and she is the one who wrote that famous poem, Al-Karim Yaqbal Ta'iban Atahu La Yakhafu Bakhsan Kulla Marrajahu Bil Adhabi Yujza. This an excellent, very eloquent, very rhetoric poem written with that kind of very qualitative, excellent language, shows how the women's scholarship reached then. All this happened before Usman Dan Fodio, which shows that this women's scholarship in Hausa land is encouraged, and there is numerous women scholars then. As well, after at the era of Caliphate of Usman Dan Fodio, there is many women scholars. Nana Asma'u, in her poem At-Tawassul bin Nisa al-Kummal, she mentioned, or she listed, tens of women scholars in Islamic scholarship from the era of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam down up to the time and era of Sheikh Usman Dan Fodio, where she mentioned scholars like Habiba Zat al-Haiba, Aisha Kwagga, Aisha Nana Gapto. I think my teacher and lecturer Nana Asma'u, here we have in Bayero University. She may correct me if there is any error in it. So I sincerely say that women are educated in Hausa land, and we have many ones. Only problem that we have faced is the research on them was neglected. And inshallah, I will try to write something for our young ones, and it will be in Hausa. I wrote one in Arabic to educate our colleagues in Arab world, where we meet with them in different academic gathering, so they become astonished to hear that there is such a kind of scholars with such kind of contribution in different aspect of Islamic knowledge and Arabic studies also. Thank you. I will not stay long.
Bismillah. Okay. So, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ni in gausa zan yi Hausa, zan yi Turanci, duka in gausa zan yi, zan dan ya matsa ko. An ce wani almajiri daga Sokoto ya zo Kano karatu, aka kawo aiki wajen malaminsa, aka gama mala ya ce to kudi za a baku ko addu'a za a yi muku. Duk sauran suka ce a mana addu'a. Dan Sokoto kun san shi na shehu, dan gaskiya aka san ku. Ya ce a ya mutsa. So zan fara da dan takaitaccen labarin ni yadda na san Nana Asma'u. Na fara sanin Nana Asma'u kafin san shehu Dan Fodio, saboda kakata jaji ce, tana cikin waɗanda over generation aka zo ake koya musu karatu. Tana Illela, ta yi aure a can. Kakana shi ko makeri ne, makerin fari ne, yawo yake daga nan zuwa gari. Karshe ya zo ƙasar Tsahe a Zamfara, sai sarkin Tsahe, ina jin Audu, ya ji labarin an ce an samu makerin fari ya zo amma wucewa zai yi, sai ya kira shi ya ce ban da makerin fari a tsaye, saboda haka ka zauna zan baka gida da abin da kake so don ka taimaka haɓaka wannan sana'a. Sai zauna a tsafe, a hankali ta ji labari yana tsafe, ta biyo fatake ta zo ta same shi, ta yi aure, ɗanta ɗaya ya rasu, mai gidanta ya rasu, sai ta taho ta so tsafe ta same shi. Ko da ta zo komai sai ya canza. Ɗansa na farko namiji, sunan ɗanta na farko namiji Muhammadu na ta'ala. Ɗanta na farko namiji sai a sami shi wannan, aka da mutu wannan sunan Muhammadu na ta'ala. Shi kuma shi ya haife ni. To lokacin da ta zo ita fara kawo karatu, sai ta dinga koya mata, ana zuwa ɗaukar karatu, ana zuwa ɗaukar karatu. Ta koya musu waƙar amada. Duk wanda ya san yana da kaka ya san waƙar amada, tana daka, tana markaɗe, waƙar amada take yi da sauran karatuttuka. Da ƙarshe aka sama mata gidanta, nan ake zuwa a ɗauki karatu. Ran da ba ta nan, akwai ƙanin babanmu, shi ne ƙaraminsu, yanzu ya tsaba 68. Shi sai ta gaya maka karatun, in matan su zo sai ya koya musu. To a nan na fara jin nanuwa a shehu, ban ma san waye shehun ba, daga na fara jin nanuwa a shehu, Asma'u a shehu, nanuwa a shehu. So daga nan na san na Asma'u, daga baya kuma na fara jin labarin shehu dan Fodio. Mama Allah saka da alheri, kun daɗe kuna jihadi. Na ɗan ka karanta hayya amma littafi na farko da ya introducing dina da Sokoto Caliphate shi ne da Sokoto model, wanda ma da ya rubuta 1971 ba a yi yawwa. Shi ne ya fara, da na fara karanta shi na fara sanin wani abu Sokoto Caliphate, an shehu, an yi wane ne. Kuma daga baya sun yi journal, malar journal ɗin ta kuna manta sunanta dai, amma da ana na fara karanta na bakan sekulanci, ban ma san secularism ba, amma ana na fara sanin sekulanci. Daga baya sun oke sekulanci secularism kenan. To haka dai muka ci gaba da karanta ayyukansu, amma duk sannan ban san shi ba. Da farkon na fara sanin shi around 2000 or so, or a little earlier. A shi sanin shi dai, ai na zo na san shi ta hannunsa. To kuma wannan sai da sai amfani. Lokacin Sokoto Caliphate za ta cika shekara 200 da kafuwa. Na zo na samu malam, na ce malam, Sokoto za ta cika 200 years, ya kamata a yi conference. Na ɗan rubuta abin da rubuta na bashi, suka gyara da Mahmud, Professor Mahmud, lokacin na Area House. Hamad Dogo ya kai, yawa aka zo shi da aka yi wannan bicentenary conference na Sokoto Caliphate. Kullum da Professor Asma'u muke tafiya Kaduna meeting. To alhamdulillah, mala Allah saka da alheri. To dan abin da zan kara kadan akan Nana Asma'u shine, da yawa na san magana gaskiya, in an ce dan Fodio Nana Asma'u, da yawa gaskiya ran nan ba san ko suwaye ba, kila suna dan ji dai. Yawa bai san waye su waye su yi karatu. Na san duk 'yan science ne nan, kuma karshe kowa ce zai asibiti za shi. To da yan law, you understand. To amma ko me za a karanta ka yi karatu, general reading yana da matukar amfani. Read wani abu wanda ba abin da kake karanta ba kenan, zai buɗe maka kwalba. Nana Asma'u kafin ta lokacin gobar ita ce kan ganiya, akwai wanda ake cewa inna. Inna is a position in the palace, is a political position in the palace held by the mother of the Sultan, Bawa Zangwarzo. Ita ce kamar Minister of Women and Children Affairs. Duk abin da ya shafi mata da komai is under inna. Now, da yawa suna tunanin shehu ya yi da wannan ya yi faɗa lazili da Bawa Zangwarzo, ba da shi ba ne. Bawa Zangwarzo almajirin shehu ne. Sun ɗan samu 'yan matsalolinsu wanda ba a rasa ba, saboda lokacin da shehu ya fara yawo yana wa'azi, sai mutane suke ta binsa. Duk da sarki ya ce maka kai wannan ba zai kwace maka jama'a. Sun samu akwai lokacin da bawa ya ce zai ba shi kuɗi, ya ce baya so amma ba shi condition 5. Zan iya tunakin da ya ce a bar mutane su yi rawani, nama rawani da bahaushe yake yi ba irin na yanzu ba. Turzunoni da aka kama saboda suna bin shawarar jama'a a sallame su da dai sauran guda biyu, sauran naman da sauran. To sun ci gaba da hulɗa da shehu. An ce a ƙarshe yakin da ba zangwar zo ya ƙarshe shi ne ya zo tambaye shi sai ci masa za ka tafi amma kar ka wuce wuri kaza. Da bawa ya sai ci nan sai ce na ga ta mala na ga ta shehu ni kuma barin gwada ƙarfi na. To the next inda ya je shi ne aka kashe shi, kamar da mala ya ce shi ne aka ji yarsa ta ji wannan doki ya yi haniliya sai ta fashe da kuwa ce baba ya rasu. Don ya lokaci yana raye ko doki ba ya hali, duk wani namiji ba ya iya motsa. To bayan shi akwai tun Yakubu, bayan Yakubu akwai Yunfa, wane ne ɗayan na ƙarshe na fata. To Yunfa da shi suka yi, a hannun Yunfa alƙalawa ta faɗi. To lokacin 1808 da ta faɗi shi ne rol ɗin da wannan take playing inna, so babu wanda zai playing rol ɗin. Shi ne rol ɗin da Nana Asma'u ta ɗauka. Ita Nana Asma'u ba position ne da ita a palace ba, ba ta da position a ce a palace a hierarchy ga ta kaza ce, amma kuma rol ɗin da ita inda take sai Nana Asma'u ta ɗauka. Shi da ta ci gaba da koyar da karatu da 'yan taru da duk abin da aka zo aka yi ta yi wannan. Saboda haka ba a sami bakin ba cewa inda ta tafi kuma yanzu kaza ya za a yi. To ɗaya daga cikin darasin da za mu koya a nan shi ne duk lokacin da wani abu ya faru, kamar yanzu al'ummar mu muna cikin wani yanayi, abubuwa suna faruwa sai a zo a ce kaza a daina kaza a daina kaza, amma kuma baka da alternative, me za ka yi to wannan wani darasi ne da ya kamata mu koya a rayuwar Nana Asma'u. A ƙarshe zan magana akan Professor Asma'u saboda a wani misali, saboda kullum ina ba da misali da ke in my classes. Kun ganta ko? Me kuka gani different a kanta? Duk kalli kanku ku kalle ta, me kuka gani different? Shigarta ko? To Nana Asma'u, Professor Asma'u ta yi maintaining ɗin dressing ɗin Hausa land, abin da ke nufi. Yanzu matanmu gaba ɗaya kowa koma dogon riga da hijabin da baya rufe jiki, amma duk mun san iyayen da kakanninmu wannan shiga suke yi. To wannan kawai na faɗa, saura kuma ku warware. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, sorry. Abana abinci. Allah saka yi. Ba ta wannan ba? To shi ke. To, ga Allah ya bani.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My name is Fodio, and I want to just appreciate everyone of you for this occasion. It has been an exciting one, and in fact, filled with nostalgia, if I may say, because I'm from Sokoto, and as the synergy of the life of Nana Asma'u is mentioned here, it's never far from how I grew up. And that's why I say it's nostalgic in a way, because Nana Asma'u has not impacted just in the area of education, no, but in character, in spirituality, as well as in community. These three things have been embedded in the entire role that we've listened today. And it's so much that women of today are picking one, leaving the other. It is high time we embrace all. And it's high time we look back to the lifestyle of Nana Asma'u and embrace it, because she's not just significant in West Africa, but she has global significance. And you and me can also do the same, especially when we look at what is happening in our communities and our societies. Nana Asma'u is a mentor. She resonates in me. Thank you very much.
Two females and two men.
Okay. I have a question. I have a question.
We'll start from the right.
Okay, Ashusat. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for this very important. Pardon? Okay. My name is Amina Adamnaganye. I am a postgraduate student in the Department of Mass Communication. I'm also a journalist. Thank you very much for this very important symposium. I just want to ask if there is any role, looking at the political, the social, and of course part of the military, or the jihad, the role she played. Was there any role that she has played, in the economic sphere of the Sokoto Caliphate? Was there any economic role that Nana Asma'u played? Thank you. Mr. Husseini? Bismillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. My name is Muhammad S. Ahmed from the Department of Soil Science, Faculty of Agriculture. I have an observation and probably two remarks. One, my observation is that the Bint itself is too small. Let me say, I believe some other people might have come and gone because the place cannot accommodate them well. So I believe that in the next project, let me say, there will be a much wider space, maybe probably be taken to some other theaters outside the gender building. Thank you very much, Prof. Number two, I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Dr. Osman Bugaji. I'm always his listener. I usually follow wherever I had that is going to deliver a lecture because I believe I'm going to gain a lot. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, all other contributors, professors, whoever, all other presenters, I am very much appreciable to what you have done. And number three, as for the discussion on this great woman, our daughters here, we are not just here to listen and live. Please try your possible best to copy what this exemplary woman has demonstrated in her life. Definitely, this woman said that what a man can do, a woman can do better, is supposed to be based on the moral. Nana Asma was a role model to all of us, not even the female. Even the male, we have to copy from her. So please, I'm advising the young to follow the exemplary of her so that saying should be focused on education, Islamic theology, and whatever, talk less of the moral, or let me say behavioral understanding, whereby you put worldly things ahead. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Aisha Abdulhamid, a level 400 student of English and Literary Studies, Faculty of Arts and Islamic Studies, and I'm also a representative of MSSN UK. And alhamdulillah, I've been able to learn a lot from Asma'u as a daughter, wife, mother, and the realities of polygyny, alhamdulillah. Please, I would like to make a request whether we could get the slides which were used to teach us so that we can possibly reflect on them and practice most of the things that we learned here. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hassan Bala, a school librarian here in Kano State. First of all, I want to acknowledge the presence of the members of the High Table and the presenters. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. But mine is a concern. I was closely following the presentation and trying to see the citations, whereby I only see a citation that reflects a name of Ahmad, only Ahmad, from the, I think it was the first presenter. So I want to ask, don't we have enough literature written by the Muslim scholars or Nigerian scholars that should be cited in such presentations? And my next question is to Dr. Bugaji. So there was a book written by Last on Sokoto Caliphate. The title of the book, I think it was, yes, the Sokoto Caliphate. The translators of the book said that there is no work to be produced later that will equate to that particular book. And going by your own presentation, we can hypothetically say the comment may be somewhat true, because the presenters, only the first presenter cited a name, Ahmad, only. I don't know whether there is going to be a source later the presenters will share, but I think going by that, the content of what people have as the culture of our own tradition, writing and knowledge is highly to be tested, sir. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I want to say Jazakumullah khairan to the presenters and Baba Prof. I have two questions. My first question is to the Baba Prof. Sir, you said that earlier in your life, you are a pharmacist by training. And we can all see now that you switch to literature and history. So my question as a student, I forgot to mention my name. I am Abba Usman, a graduate of microbiology from here at UK. So what motivate you and driving force that make you to change your discipline from science to history and literature, which you are now a professor, a very good and popular professor on that field. Then the second question is that so we have to the presenters, we have heard and read that Nana Asma'u, she's a well-educated scholar, housewife. So, but in contrary to our modern women, or I can say young girls, now when they went through education, they are now treating like contrary to what Nana Asma'u has did. Like they are treating marriage as a form of slavery, form of slavery, then child abuse, and they are always looking men as their oppressors. So what is the discrepancy or the dichotomy between Nana Asma'u teaching or scholarly life and the today modern women's mindset about feminism? That is disdaining men, they are abusing.
We have come to the end of questions. It's now time for the research process. What will be the sequence?
Okay, I want to say a little bit about one of the points that was made in the life of Nana Asma'u, especially in view of the lifestyle. You know, the particular context of where you are is the reality that you place yourself. We know our reality. And I always say, I'm speaking to you as the director of the Center for Gender Studies. I always say, If you tell me that what you want to offer to a woman is equality in terms of everything, in terms of right to worship, right to have, life and whatnot, those, they are rights that are enshrined under Islam. But the lens or the mechanism of getting those rights, you can't say they will be equal prisms. So you can't tell me I should lift this table, for example, even though men will do it, it will be very difficult for others. So likewise, the context of, let's say, society or marriage. Supportive husbands are different. And that generation of those that we see and the kind of support that we can all see that was centered around Nana Asma'u is so different from what we see in reality now. I was so happy, and I wanted to give this as example. When Mama, we call her Mama at CGS, at C Corner. The Center for Gender Studies has a confidential corner that provides services for mental, psychosocial, and different forms of support to students and staff. When she was making her presentation, and she acknowledged our special guest, our chairman, and then the professors that are here, she also acknowledged her husband, Malam. Thank you very much. Wallahi, you are role models to me. Because that presentation she was making, I am sure there was Malam's input in it. That is what we need. And then there was a time she was making a presentation, she said Malam was there at 2 a.m. helping her and supporting. I mean, this is what we need. And the point I'm raising today is for our men. You need to know that the session we're having is about a wholesome ummah that integrates the needs of the men and the women and the kids and the girls and the brothers and the sisters and everyone, leaving no one behind. We're not saying just the men. So don't be fixated in no, I tell my brothers, I'll take your pictures in your room so that when you talk, I can share that picture with your wife. Yes. So please be those people that will be understanding. But I'm picking this microphone to talk on polygyny. People tend to reject it. And when I was getting married, and I'm this person that was in the civil society sphere, I still am, and I'm still a very passionate activist for human rights. I'm not saying women's rights exclusively. No, I'm saying vulnerable groups, be it women, children, persons with disabilities, migrants, it doesn't matter. In Islam, we know what Islam proposes. Islam promotes the well-being and welfare of society. So when we take that as our focus, we start to think. So I had this proposition, and then there was, the proposition to either go with this or with that. The person that I married is someone that is married. And alhamdulillah, for me, I give this example. I was sitting with my computer on my lap when a call came, and it was mentioned that I was selected to become an ambassador. The first thing I did was I asked him, what do you think of that? And he said, there's no way Allah will give you something, I will deny it for you. So I'm talking about this in the context of, what if I had been there? Polygyny has supported me in my career aspiration, and that's the honest truth. Thank you.
I think
Okay, somebody wants to say something? Okay. I'm conscious that we don't have time, so I'm not going to, I hope I will not take so much of your time. I'm interested in a question of the role of Asma'u in the economy. There wasn't sufficient time to speak, but you see, the niche which Nana Asma'u addressed was the social, the educational, the intellectual. She was part of the team, if you like, that ran the caliphate. So she must have had a lot of inputs. And Bello, her brother, when he was Sultan, he was in constant, discussion with her. So they will not enact a policy without those kind of consultations. So there were a lot of. But let me tell you something about the economy. About 2-3 years ago, one of the state governors agreed to train his local government staff. So we requested that we should get the chairman of the local government, the deputy, the secretary, and 2 others. So 5 from each local government. We wanted to particularly change their mindset about development. Because local governments normally just share money. They think this is free money from government, they just share it. So we wanted to teach them what development is all about. Okay, we brought a number of people to speak, including a professor of economics, who I think graduated from here, Professor Dharma, some of you would know him, Nazifi Dharma. He came, he spoke about development, he talked about different models of development and what this country needs. I was chairing. He came back to his seat and I took a copy of a book. I showed him a quotation and he read it. The first thing he asked me, he said, Marlon, where did you get this? I said, this is a quotation from one of the books of Muhammad Bello. He said, which Muhammad Bello? I said, the Sultan of Sokoto. The first, he said, no, it's impossible. Because this is exactly what he just finished saying. As a professor of economics, he was basically given a model of what we now call, they call them cluster formation, clustering industries of similar production, always near or not far away from the raw material. So when he discovered that, he was like shocked. How could they have Muhammad Bello sort of an idea which they as professors of economists think that is a new innovation or invention? Now it just underscores the fact that these people have far better ideas at that particular time. It's because we don't read, we don't know them. I mean, someone I was lecturing many years back in the faculty of law. I didn't study law, but a colleague of mine who was teaching at Ahmad Bello University, Introduction to Sharia, he thought I should introduce the history of the milieu so that when he discusses Sharia, people will have a context. So anytime he's starting his course, he will ask me to come and speak to his class for 2 hours. And it was a mixed class, as you would expect of any faculty of law. There were Muslims, there were Christians. So I spoke about the Sokoto Caliphate and I said a few things. One of the questions the student asked was, this Usman and Fodio, we learned he's a terrorist. So how do you reconcile that? I said, fine. Have you read any of the books of Usman and Fodio? He said, no. Do you know how many books Usman and Fodio has written? He said, no. Did you know how many books his daughter Asma'U wrote? He said he did not even know that he had a daughter who wrote books. So after that, I said, now you are training to be a lawyer and hopefully you'll be a judge. Now, how do you decide a case without even giving the party fair hearing? So you are not likely to be a good judge. So I went on to educate him and he was very ashamed of his question by the time I finished. The point is that ignorance is the real problem. Not just for those who are not Muslims, even for Muslims themselves. We don't know ourselves, we don't know our identity, we don't know what we are. And this is why we have very low esteem. Because we think we are down the ladder, we have to go up to the standards put by the West. But the standards put by Islam, the West has not caught up with that standard. And if you read widely and deeply, you come across scholars in the West who have succeeded in reading and are honest enough to say so. For example, there is professor of law in Harvard. His name is Noah Feldman. He is a professor of law at Harvard, but he's also a member of the Council of Foreign Relations of New York, which is a very high status. He wrote a book, which I had the opportunity to review for a journal in the UK. And if you want, I can share this review. If you have a website, that also reviews of books, Quran and women in the Quran by a Moroccan lady. These are things that your students can find quite. So Noah Feldman found the American decision to destroy Al-Shabaab in Somalia using Ethiopian soldiers as the worst decision that America did. And he said that the Sharia system is far more effective than any law that the West has produced. And if you go to Harvard, the Harvard Faculty of Law, as you step in, the first thing you see is the ayah of the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawamina. If you look at those kind of things, you know that some of them know, but Islam, has a much higher standard of justice than the West has been able to. And no Feldman said as much, and he spoke a lot about the superiority of the Sharia. He's an American professor from Harvard and a member of Council of Foreign Relations. But because we don't read, we don't know a lot of this stuff. So look, the point is, Nana Asma'u has participated in the construction and running of a caliphate that solved the economic, the social, and the security problems of the vast region called the Hausa land and beyond. So Nana has a lot of ideas. We just need to read her books. Time will not allow me to say more. Someone spoke about Miralast, the Sokoto Caliphate. His book, The Sokoto Caliphate, is one of many literature, so it's not the only one. At the time he wrote it, perhaps, yes, in the Western literature, it was a prominent book. But this book is something that it has already been overtaken. But even those of us who came later to the field, we have found a lot of faults, a lot of falsehoods. You can sometimes, we know him very well. We have colleagues, even though he's a lot older. And I don't know if my rendering will. One time I wrote, I spoke to you about a paper I wrote on the contributions of Socrates scholars to the study of medicine. We met in France for some event, and I had a copy of the paper. Email and WhatsApp were not there. Well, there was email, but it was limited. So I gave him a hard copy for review, because this is what we do as academics, especially when you know somebody is critical, right? You give him his work, your work, let him see it, let him make his own comment. And I remember he made a comment. He said, well, you have done very well, you have said this is very important, but you have forgotten to include prayer. And then the paper finished, so he said, PTO, please turn over. And what is it when I turn over? For its placebo effect. So I don't understand. Sometimes, you understand what's placebo? It's destroying the whole idea of prayer. I mean, he has recognized that I have not included prayers, and you think this is a serious point, right? But when you turn over what he said, prayer has only placebo effect. It's like the psychological effect only. So that is Miralast. He has very interesting perspectives that you can share, you can understand, you can benefit. But he remains a Western anthropologist. He's not even a historian in the real sense of the word. So, but don't refuse to read his work because of the mistakes he makes. Read it, but be critical, right? And don't stop at just one book. Even if you find what I write, don't read just my work. Read widely, like Professor said. Then you'll be able to get where exactly things are. Why did I study history? I don't know if time will allow, but let me try to summarize it. When I was in ABU, by the way, I graduated 1975, June. So this is 51 years ago, isn't it? The first year I studied, I worked here in Kano, in this Murtala hospital, is it? Yes, many people will be saying, 51 years, yes, I'm 75 now. I may not look it, but I'm 75, alhamdulillah. So I worked here, there are a lot of stories very interesting of my experience here in Kano as a pharmacist. Later, of course, we went to the NYSC and then we came back. Then I was called back to teach pharmacy in the university, in ABU. Why did I choose to do this? Because when I was in ABU, I was a member of the MSS. At one time, I was the president of the campus, the MSS. And so in our final year, we reviewed our experiences. We had, in our secondary school, nobody taught us anything about Asma'u. The curriculum at that time, there was nothing about our own history. You read about Mungo Park, Clapperton, Mary Salesa, you hear about Pizarro going to Spain, going to Latin America, but there was nothing about ourselves, not a paragraph. So we had nothing. It was when we were on campus, we were inviting lecturers to talk to us, to give us lectures as MSS, that the Sudanese among the lecturers were making reference to the books written by Sheikh Usman Fodio. And we had to ask them where, which book, who? And they were shocked. They said, you have scholars that are far ahead of the scholars of the Arab world. They said the quality of the Arabic that Shehu and his students and his colleagues were writing is far better than the writing of the Arabs themselves. And they said, they were asking, where did he go to learn Arabic? And the interesting thing is that he never went out of Hausa land. He didn't even go to Hajj. He wanted to, but he didn't. Abdullah did not go to Hajj. Muhammad Bello did not go to Hajj. He had the pain that he could not go because he had the opportunity to go in a way. But no, so that's why he wrote Tabihul Saqib. Tabihul Saqib. على من يحتسب من المفاسد. تنبيه الراقد, he wrote it on Hajj, but he also wrote it as a work on foreign policy. Dr. Yaro Della did his PhD on that particular book as a book on foreign policy. And he dwelt on the meaning of istata'a, because the condition for going to Hajj, liman istata'a ilayhi sabila. So what is this istata'a? And he spent a lot of time, he said istata'a is not just the money. He said, if you have a responsibility that is so important that your absence can harm the community, you cannot leave for Hajj. And that was what stopped him, because he was 24 hours a day working on the caliphate. And those days, Hajj is not a 2 weeks affair. It's almost a year's affair, because you have to go by road on camels and donkeys and food and whatever, and eventually maybe by sea when you get close to the, to the Red Sea. So the point is, just to come back to the point quickly, we had something that we never expected. So it was from them that we started to learn about Sokoto Caliphate. So what did we do? We asked our colleagues in the history department to come and give us lectures. Unfortunately, our colleagues in the history department had no idea either. And that was a crisis. So we told ourselves, If these Europeans have hidden our history from ourselves, then we must write our own history. If our colleagues in the history department only know the history of the West and maybe a bit of the contemporary history of the colonial period, then we're in trouble. So we formed a committee that we must write our own history. And they asked me to chair the committee. We went out of the campus, we did our NYC, we got to our jobs, and those good old days, the moment you come out of the university, you have like a car waiting for you, brand new, not to Congo. And we had, in fact, LADA was for NCE. No, it's for NCE. If you are a graduate, you not you normally go for a Japanese car. And Toyota or Lancer, Mitsubishi. But I had 5 job offers when I was graduating. I had from my state government. I had one from the university. I had one from a company that has a mentholatum factory here. I had 2 others from other pharmaceutical companies. Very good offers with a vehicle and tour allowance and everything. So by the time we got out, most of the people in this committee reneged. They just thought, I've gotten a car, I've got a job, I'm married. The headache of leaving and going. So I found nobody prepared to go. So I said, as the chair, I will not fail our pledge. But then I did science. So who will accept me to read history? In any case, if you want to read that history, you have to learn Arabic. Because almost all the manuscripts you are going to read are going to be in Arabic. So there was a big dilemma. Those days, I went to UK. I went to School of Foreign Studies. I went to Bristol. I went to a few universities. I went to Sussex. And those good old days, from your salary, from your university salary, you can pay for a ticket to UK. Yeah, and you don't need visa. So actually what I did was I just came to parked my car, went to the airport, British I got my ticket and I was just and my passport I just went, it was stamped because I was Commonwealth citizen, no visas. And you have your naira, you can change it in the bureau de change in London. And our naira was very strong. So I went to this place and they said, oh sorry, we can't admit somebody who has done science. But then there was Professor Asma'u. Ismail, not Faruqi, he's a Sudanese. When he finished his tenure in ABU, went back to Sudan, he became the Dean of the Faculty of Arts. And as Dean, he was the head of the graduate college. And he knew I wanted to leave. But I came back and I told him I couldn't find a place, I don't know where to go. So when he saw himself, he was the head of graduate college. There was this course in African Asian Studies, which is an interdisciplinary social science course. So he said, I'm going to get you an admission. And he got an admission, and I was the first science student that was ever admitted in that faculty. He made it like a special arrangement for him. Okay, so he gave me the chance. I went to the scholarship board, and they said, you must be crazy. You did pharmacy, and you want to go and study history, what kind of thing? But these are secularists trained by Europeans looking up to Europe. They don't understand what I was doing. So I decided to go without scholarship. Someone helped me along the way. And I remember later I got a scholarship, but even then I couldn't get, when I finished my certificate, I had to wait for someone to pay for the balance of the fees before I can collect my certificate. But that's all part of life. So I went to study, and I was told that if I cannot make 60% of all the 7 courses, the master's program was 2 years, then they will give me only postgraduate diploma. I wouldn't be able to proceed. So I had to work hard. And I don't know if I should tell you this. Because I was frightened and I don't want to go back to Nigeria without having left my pharmacy without a master's. So I worked so hard. At the end of the day, by the time the results came out, it turned out I had the highest mark and I was given the prize. Now what that meant, he now said, from now on, we have to change the admission policy. He went to the Senate and that of the admission policy was changed. And then others, architects and everybody was able to. One of the ones who benefited from this is now a professor. He's an architect, but he's a professor of political science in the US at the moment. And we went to visit his center with the Sultan and a lot of entourage from Nigeria. And he stood to welcome us because we were the head of the place. And he embarrassed me by telling all these stories. So the point is, it was that determination that took me to do that. And it wasn't easy. I had to learn Arabic. And then I had to now come and learn all these subjects I've never learned in my life. Political science, anthropology, African languages, and this. And what that meant was, for most of the time, when I close, by 8, we have had Isha and dinner. I go to the classroom. I don't come back until I hear the first azan. And I remember there are days when I keep reading, I forgot to go to the toilet, I forgot to look for anything. I was focused on the books I was reading. When I hear the azan, I say, Subhanallah, what time is it? And that is the only sleep I have. I go back and do the fajr and then sleep for 2 or 3 hours. Have my breakfast, come back to the class for normal lectures. For quite some time, this is what I was doing. Alhamdulillah, I benefited. And those good old days, I would sometimes, on holidays, I would go to the library, for example, just spend from 8 when they open, I stay until 9 p.m. when they close. I just, go shelf by shelf. I read social psychology, I read so many other things. Why am I doing this? Is because the ulama, when you read about the Muslim ulama, they have never focused on one field. Imam al-Razi, who wrote the famous Tafsir al-Razi, was a medical doctor. So you find engineers into usul al-fiqh. You find scientists, doing sociology, writing. So it's, in Islamic intellectual tradition, knowledge is encyclopedic. It's not here where you are an economist, you just study economy. You don't know much about other things. No, in Islam, we have to learn broadly. You can specialize, but you have to learn broadly. I don't know if I've taken too much time to tell you. And I've never regretted it. Yanzu ai an gama ina ga. Abu ɗaya ya rage. I will break protocol and speak in Hausa. Saboda ina son ‘ya'yanmu kar ya zama muna ta turanci ba su gane me yake. Ina son a gane cewa abu ɗaya ya rage ba a faɗa ba game da Nana. Ina jiran wani ya faɗa, to na ga ba a faɗa ba. Nana was a Sufi. And the success of the whole enterprise, sorry, na ce zan Hausa ko? Shi, ni ba na son na haɗa, na fi son inda zan Hausa in Hausa. Don, na san haka ɗin mu da muka yi boko Hausa tana mana wuya, amma ni da abin da sa na iya ko na koyi abin da Hausa saboda na yi siyasa. Ba ka zuwa ƙauye ka rika kawo musu kalmar turanci sai ce a wannan dan boko ne bai ma samu ba. In ka je kuma ruwan nan da suke sha na rafi su za su kawo maka, za a gan shi ruwan rafi, ba za ka je musu da ruwan kwalba ba irin wani kamar da wasu suke yi. Kwalbar nan tasu za a kawo maka a dama maka, ƙuda na biyu ana haka za ka sha. In kana so su ga yadda cewa kai nasu, ko da haka muka ko duk lafiyar mu da alhamdulillah. To abin nufi idan muka manta cewa sufanci shi ne ginshiƙin nasarar da Asma'u ta samu, shi ne ginshiƙin nasarar da su shehu suka samu. Shi sufanci ba abubuwan da ake bane yau na mauludi da zikiri da sauransu, ni ina ganin wannan duk rashin abun ne yasa duk aka koma akan waɗannan abubuwa. Shekara 50 da suka wuce ko ma 40 duk ba a irin waɗannan abubuwa. Shi sufanci in kana yin sa ba ka faɗa kai sufi.